eyelids sort of dissolve, and now you're looking into space. Now you're focused on what's in front of your eyelids, that space that projects whatever that space is. And I know when I'm there because that's the part where I'm like, I know the next step is sleep.
Mhm.
So now I'm in the in between. And then these colors and these patterns. Right when I start to see geometrical shapes and patterns or people's faces
Mhm.
and objects clearly in my mind's eye, I know I'm in the meditative state.
Yeah.
And then when the colors started coming, and then you started saying the colors, and then the next one would pop up, and then you would say the color, I go, how am I ahead of him? That's what I was thinking. And
Sure.
I got overly excited and I ruined it for myself.
Yeah, and when you try to capture it, when you try to
Yeah,
clamp onto it, you then
yeah.
you're putting your own spin on what's supposed to be happening. I felt that with Satori, where I would go into a state of union and that I would feel myself getting sucked into
Hmm.
what felt like my third eye, but it felt like I was going into and collapsing into this vortex within there. And I would feel everything becoming one, everything would tingle. And I would breathe into it, and I would feel like if I went a step further, I may not come back.
Right.
But it felt so good. And then I wanted to go back to that place. So I would take myself back to that place and reach the precipice. And when I would reach the doorway, I get excited. And almost like a scared animal or something like that, it would just escape and be gone.
Well, I'm going to tell you, for those brief moments, I escaped
Yeah.
and I was gone.
Yeah.
There was a point where I thought, oh my God, am I the only one in the room? And I was thinking to myself, there's because I was in that void. I was
Mhm.
like, oh man. And I'm still able to monitor my breathing. Like at that point, it was like it was on autopilot,
Yeah.
but I could still monitor it while in that space.
Welcome back, people. We had some technical
Oh, we're live.
issues.
Well,
Um,
you weren't going to tell us, were you? You just
no,
going to let
I
us?
didn't want to interrupt the flow.
Yes.
I'm not a flow interrupter. Well, I
Well,
guess I did in many ways,
yeah,
but
kind of.
I'm
A flow blocker.
a flow blocker.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be. I don't want. I'm not the
Don't-
beaver of the universe flowing through.
Don't be a flocker.
I mean, does the universe have a universal beaver that blocks the flow?
It's an image that will haunt me for days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I perceive that beaver to have a rainbow tail and
I like it. Sunglasses.
sunglasses and
Mhm.
maybe a doobie in one hand and the book of knowledge in the other, going, I could block flow whenever I damn well want to.
I
Yeah.
perceive that beaver from a Naked Gun movie going, nice beaver.
Thanks. I just had it stuffed.
Yeah, you see,
Okay.
that's putting ourselves out there.
Welcome.
That's aging us, sir.
Welcome back to another live show. Today we have Ben, aka Benjamin, aka not Guru, but Uru.
That's me.
Yeah.
Why you are you?
Why you are you?
And if you're not familiar with Ben, you soon will be. This guy's podcast and his channel or his talking head or whatever you label it is on the uprising. But it's not on the uprising for the glamour. He doesn't want your money.
I'll take it though. If
He'll
you're
take
offering.
it. I mean, he'll take it. I mean,
Hell,
shit, I'll take it.
I'll take it.
He doesn't want your respect, but I mean, if you're willing to give it to him, that's fine
I'll take
too.
that. I'll take that too.
Yeah.
But he's after something greater than you can anticipate when you click on the show or when you click on said video. And I think when I stumbled upon his podcast, or I don't know why I call it a podcast. I think because everyone's doing a podcast. So if you're saying something, and I guess it's a podcast in many ways.
Yeah, I mean it's whatever you want to call it. They're talking head pieces, and we'll be doing like a podcast soon.
Right. I just it captivated me. It hit me on all levels, and it reminded me of myself. So if you get a chance, go ahead and go over to Why You Are You. It's the letter Y, the letter U, the letter R, the letter U.
It's it sounds like we're Sesame Street. Today's podcast is brought to you by the letters Y, U,
Yeah.
and R, U.
I probably should have did that in like the Count Dracula.
Or you should have just let him do that.
I mean, he will do it regardless.
He's doing a good job.
Do you think he's doing a good job? Do you honestly think this guy's doing a great job right now?
I paid him nothing, and he's promoting. So this is.
Oh,
They normally don't let me out of the cage. Ben.
yeah. So you're just taking what you can get. You're an opportunist.
Well, yikes! I like the way he was promoting me a lot more. This is turned.
Well, there you go, Ben.
I'm not trying to turn the tables. I'm just saying maybe you could do better. Ben is from Why You Are You. And if you're intrigued in that name alone and that resonates well with you, then go search out his channel. Now, how did you like that pitch?
It's better. Yeah, I'm gonna show you guys how it's done right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben's going to do it for us.
So Yuru,
Yuru.
Why You Are You,
Yeah.
was something that came as a vision. I shared this with you guys before, and it was after years of working with people in healing. It was realizing that as a healer, or whatever I was doing at the time, it's nowhere near what we can do for ourselves. And so I've listened to all the different gurus and people like that out there. Not that I had traveled the world, but I listened to a lot. I've read a lot of books and everything. And what I'm stumbling upon is what everyone's stumbling upon right now. This is like the Great Awakening that's happening. And the Great Awakening is what you are searching for, you carry inside of yourself. So it's kind of like, to use a fancy word, a portmanteau, mixing the word you and guru together, because you find the teacher here, and then eventually you sublimate that teacher. You've taken in all the knowledge or whatever, and then you find another teacher, and you find another teacher, and you find another teacher, and eventually it takes you to yourself. And as a fixer, my whole life, trying to fix family and fix life and fix everything around me, getting into healing arts and trying to like fix the people coming in, you realize like you got like 5 minutes, or you have like 20 minutes or an hour with this person. But if they can instill something within themselves and activate that on a regular basis, and they're going to walk in that activated state with what they're doing with their lives and carry it, and becomes the very epitome of giving a man a fish versus teaching a man to fish.
Right.
So when you realize that what you're seeking, if someone's like stimulating you or turning you on in some way, like spiritually or whatever, and you're taking them as a teacher, they're really just activating that part inside of themselves through an external mirror. But it's all going to lead back to the guru that's already inside of us.
So you're saying these teachings are just awakenings, like people that are just have forgotten, taking up this earthly body, you forgot it. You forgot what was truly you in our gurus that we learn from and take things from.
Yeah.
We in turn become that.
We become a product of limitation.
Yeah.
And because the people around us have lived a limited life in some way, then we inculcate based upon limitation. And then the teacher is just the one who's standing there, a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open, and saying, maybe the parameters or the boundaries by which you've been living, maybe it's not that. Maybe that cage that you've been put in is not that. Maybe if you expand your horizons a little bit, and they're living a little bit more free than you are. And they're showing you. And then the next teacher, you like discard that teacher, and then you find, oh, this teacher over here, this teacher's living more free in this way. Like I have a friend of mine who I call like a libertine. He's very, very open, like sexually within his life. And in many ways, he's taught me, because I'd grown up like feeling a fear of sex and sexuality and these puritanical feelings of this is right and this is wrong. And when he shows me that like love can enter into sexual relations and sexual states, it shows me that like my limited viewpoint on that. Because what is sin is what we're saying is like where we're not seeing love, or where we see something that can't be forgiven. And so the teachers that we take are just showing us this expanded point of how we can bring love into all these different places. And with what I feel called to do, which is not just me, it's you guys as well. It's like every soul that's coming online right now that wants to share something, right?
Right.
They're all wanting to share how we find our way to love through all these different pathways, which is how we find our way to peace, which is how we find our way to union, which is how we find our way to connection. How we walk in that all the time, not just like when we're at church, and not just when we're in meditation, but how we're like walking in that state. We can walk in that state all the time, and then we don't have to go somewhere for it. It's something that like we become.
Yeah, we can retreat into ourselves.
Yeah.
And manifest that
we could walk in the temple and take the temple everywhere we go. Like we were driving like up and down the country in like the last week, and all these people are driving their RVs. And it's like being able to take your RV wherever you go, like your temple, wherever you go.
Mhm.
and have that center point or that peace or that love. So you don't have to go, "Oh, I went to the store and had a terrible experience, or I had a terrible experience today. Oh, the day was ruined. Why was the day ruined? Why can't we transcend a moment and actually extend a moment of connection
Mhm.
and carry that with us and carry this moment, which we talked about at dinner together? Like, there's no problem in this moment. There are no problems in this moment. And when we stumble upon a self that has a problem, we're stumbling upon a self that is holding trauma or emotion or something that has been unresolved. And if we can find a way back to love or connection within that place,
Mhm.
we can find a way back to the moment.
What what's as a kid growing up, what sparked you to walk this particular path? Were you always this way? I mean, as
Yeah.
a child,
Well,
and then you go into your teens, and then what develops in you that says like, man, this is where I need to be because I'm healing from some trauma, so I feel like I need to now walk this path.
yeah, I think that we stumble upon it. I don't know that we stumble upon it. I think that we're thrust into it. And I think that to speak in a humbling and self-effacing way, like I think that all children come in with this purity or this light. Like growing up, well, 4 or 5 years old, I recall talking to like an adopted aunt, and she was giving corporal punishment to her child.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I didn't know how to reach her, but I knew that what she was doing was causing pain, and I knew that she was a loving person. So I screamed up at the stairs. I was on the bottom level. She was upstairs with my friend, giving him a whipping for something. And I said, "Aunt, the Bible tells us to be kind." Like I didn't read the Bible. I'm 4 years old,
Right.
but I just you have this sense of kindness, and you have this sense of like the way that the world not should be, but can be.
Mm-hmm.
If we are compassionate, we are able to connect together. We have this sense, and that's interwoven into everyone. And you can push it down, and you can suppress it within people, and you can forget, and you can walk as a numb person who has forgotten who they are, and you can stuff down with food or substances or narcotics or whatever it takes, some sort of creature comfort. We all have this imprint. And then people that I've met that are saying something similar have been through something like you were telling me about your near death experience. And you've talked about it, I imagine, through this medium before.
Mm-hmm.
But something happens and you can't go back.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just kept getting sick over and over again. And I was looking at a doorway of either dying or transcending. And then what I was shown, not to get too abstract, is a life of service and a life of connection. But it looks abstract to people. And the people that aren't living it, they're not better or worse. It's they're still able to tuck back a little bit or suppress, but they carry this wild spirit inside of them. Everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
And if we pause for a moment and train with one another, like you and I just did, and train with one another, we enter into an entrained state together of remembering. And if you're with somebody in that space, what activates is the guru, the teacher, the higher self, the enlightened one. What kind of drives me mad in a sense is that everyone is just one pause away from enlightenment or expansion, one release or one surrender away. And if they can just let go for just a fraction of a second to what they're holding on to, which they think that they're holding on to protect themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but it's preventing them from actually experiencing all that they are.
Mm-hmm.
If they can do that, they can release a lifetime worth of trauma and emotion and whatever they've been storing in a matter of seconds, and it doesn't have to hurt. It can come through tears, it can come through ecstasy. But whether we do that or not, when we cross that threshold of the physical death, it comes anyways. But you don't have to die to get there. You
Right.
can experience these transcendent
Right.
states here.
Right. And I say that too. Like I know I had an NDE. For me, I technically died to get there.
Yeah.
But I often tell people you don't have to do that. There's and people tell me that too. Like there's ways of you can meditate, and there's ways that you can find certain bliss and things that you would normally not notice. But if you just still the mind, and I like to always say shut the fuck up and
Yeah.
receive and listen, you can get there. With practice, you can get there. Now you can't just, oh, they said I can get to this space. It's not an overnight thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have to work at it. If you really want it that bad, you would work at it. But I think what you said is like people have these vices, right? They don't want to let go of whatever trauma that they have or whatever past or whatever they're dealing with now in the current.
That's all they know.
That's all they know. So
Yeah.
so how do you just like all of a sudden let that go?
Well, you can't force someone through a doorway, and you can't force a healing. And so, working with people in the healing arts for the time that I did, I could take on the energy the person held. But if they didn't learn the lesson, they would just draw the energy back and recreate the same lessons because they hadn't learned the lesson. They hadn't grown past the point of understanding the lesson of why they were drawing that experience in the first place. There has to be a moment of self-awareness and then a choice point. And they can jump rapidly, but they have to be willing and open to do so. And to borrow from Ram Dass, he called his guru the cooked goose, the fully cooked goose. But when people are around Baba Neem Karoli as an example, because of what the vibration he was vibrating at, the state he was vibrating in, one of the accounts I heard from, I believe, Krishna Das was that just being around him, people felt a love that they perhaps knew was possible, but they hadn't fully experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're around one who's vibrating at a high vibrational rhythm, a high consciousness state, this is known within Buddhism too. It's like taking a log next to a burning log, and you will ignite too, because you carry that potential within you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, what I was saying at dinner is like people are walking around like candlesticks, just waiting to be lit. And if you know how to light people,
Mm-hmm.
they can be lit. But it would be a charge against their free will to do so. And so, what I've learned through my own experiences, and anyone listening to this, you're going to have your own experience. Take what's being said and apply it to your life if it feels like it fits. But what I've learned myself is not to tinker. If someone's asking for support and help and connection, I will meet them there. But I used to try to take on for people and then get upset when they didn't change. And people who are willing to change and willing to walk through a door, they can and they will rapidly. And they could do what's taken us in this room years to do.
Mm-hmm.
They could do in a matter of minutes
Mm-hmm.
or days. But it's all in willingness of how much you're willing to surrender, let go, be here in the moment,
Right.
and go into it. If someone's vibrating in a very high rhythm, or you're in a space where people are vibrating in a very high rhythm, and this is something that we're talking about, like with ascension states and perhaps resonant fields or the harmonic resonance. This is something that happened with the 80s, harmonic resonance. You can see a shift in consciousness globally rapidly. And that's something that I believe is pulling us all forward right now, whether we know it or not. Like part of why I stepped away from practice and part of why I want to be doing what I'm doing right now with you guys and what I'm doing through Uru is the recognition that that's where it's headed anyways. That's where the whole world's headed. Where else is there to go but to go into the ocean or to go into the vastness of what we are? There's nowhere else to go. I can get another job. I can buy more things. I can have all these creature comforts and experiences, but nothing transcends that with which I carry inside of me. It doesn't mean I need to eschew the human life in the material world. It just means that I can not escape and I can experience the bliss and the ecstasy of my being and carry that with me and then share that state of being with the world that I occupy. And we can activate each other and walk in a world of connection together. And we can see a rapid change, a rapid revolution in consciousness just by virtue of our willingness to be together and to connect together and form union through our connection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, take me, okay. When you were a kid, did you see something profound that was going to lead you to this?
I would see things as a child and then I shut it off. So I would like see spirits when I was a child. And I always felt like I was very sensitive and I was sick from a very young age. So I had a very great difficulty like embodying from the age of like 3 weeks old to the age of like a year and a half. I was on antibiotics and I was just sick on and off for most of my life. But I think too that I was highly empathic. And these things I'm saying, I'm not meaning to say as though it is extraordinary or something that's special or unique. But I felt like I was just empathic, like I felt the world. I felt the world around me. If somebody was hurting, it felt like it was hurting me. If I watched something on television and somebody was, something bad was happening, it felt like it was happening to me. So I just had a difficulty separating myself from the world at a very early point. But in practice, I would meet people that would like talk with the dead. I would meet people that could see colors, like you were seeing colors when we were doing meditation a moment ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see colors. When I can go into a deep state, I can go into what feels like Jung, and I can open up my chakras and my centers. I can do that with anyone I'm working with. I don't tend to see colors. I'll see visions within my third eye or my mind's eye, I'll see things as a yes or no. I'll have very intuitive experiences as I'm building those connections inside myself. There's nothing extraordinary about my case. And in fact, being in practice, I got to have an experience with all the people coming in, and it's like they were coming out of the closet. You know, they were saying in a very furtive and clandestine way. They would say, you know, I've never told anyone this before, but I've been able to do this my whole life. And I kept meeting person after person after person that would say that. And a part of me was like, God damn it, why aren't we talking about this?
But we've built that stigma, right?
Well,
Society
yeah.
has built that narrative.
We were
where
burning people, you know, on the
Right.
stake not that long ago.
calling them witches and how dare you, and it goes
Right.
against the belief of this and that, pretty much denying our own abilities.
Existence.
Yeah, or our own, like you said, superpower. We're just denying ourselves that.
Yeah.
And I guess when you watch podcasts like yours and ours, this is just, well, look, these guys can be vulnerable. They can admit that they're going through some stuff and they're not ashamed of it, and they're just throwing it out there. I guess that's how you kind of wake people up to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But I think it's just going to have to be like, okay, you're going to have pockets of people waking up. But until something really profound shifts the masses, I think we're going to always have this pockets here and there, here and there.
What do
here
you
and
do when
there.
you've got nothing to hold on to? Like you had a near-death experience. For me, I had nothing to hold on to.
Right.
I was chronically sick.
Yeah.
And I had chronic fatigue syndrome, which I don't believe in anymore. I believe I have a greater explanation for it, and I can share that at another time if you want to hear it. But when I began to form some level of mastery of my energy field and what was happening inside me and my being, I wasn't getting sick anymore, and I wasn't tired. I don't tire. I sleep, but there are points where I don't need to. If I'm fully connected and I'm one with my being and I'm walking in that state, I don't get tired, not like I did before. But I lost my train of thought. With the world, if you have nothing to hold on to, like this is what I was having a vision of. If we had one shift, and we live in the United States, if we had one shift within the financial system or the governmental system or the systems we relied upon. This happened in 2008. People who had saved their life savings all of a sudden saw it go to nothing.
Right.
Right. And they were told their whole life that if they just sold themselves short and they lived a fractured existence and they worked a job that they may or may not have liked for a long enough period of time, they would be given freedom when they were too old and too enfeebled to be able to enjoy it. I'm not meaning to be derogatory.
Right.
But I don't buy into that.
No.
And our system, I'm not saying it's tenuous. What I'm saying is we are building a bedrock off of a system that is not even that old. And right now we have two people running for president. And I'm not gonna disparage, but if we could pick out of 300 plus million people, two capable people for running, we may not pick these two people.
Right.
And I'm not saying one is better than the other or anything along those lines. What I'm saying is we have to let go at a certain point, and suffering tends to be the way to do that. And anyone I've met that's a born again Christian found Jesus in a bottle. And for myself and many people that came in, they dealt with chronic pain or chronic issues for a long time, and then they just couldn't anymore. So if the world experiences any kind of shift whatsoever, which is something that many of us feel like is forthcoming, and it's not meant to be scary, we have to live our world differently. And what does that mean? And I had this vision recently, but if you look at like the last 500 to 1,000 years, we've gone from like the divine right of kings to like the Enlightenment movement of the 1700s, which built the bedrock of our constitutional system we have right now, which is still not a true democracy. We have representatives, but most people don't have a say. We live in what you could say an oligarchy, where very few people have a power over the many. But when people stand up and begin to reclaim their power, begin to speak and live in such a way, if you don't like the world you're living in, be a steward of it, be a custodian of it.
Okay, what's that going to take? What's that going to take to get the masses to finally be like, I'm done with this shit. It's time. Social Security is not going to be there for me.
There's
It's
going to
not
be
going
some
to be there
pushback.
for you.
Right.
It's not going
Right.
to be there for him.
Yeah.
You're
What-
taking away the very identity in which people were raised. People will push back and say, so now you're against capitalism, and
Sure.
now you're against my way of life. But
I'm like Ferris Bueller. I'm against all isms.
I'm like, yeah.
You
Yeah, I
remember
like
he's
that.
like in the shower with like the
Yeah.
mohawk?
yeah,
Yep.
I'm against all. I'm not against any ism, but the thing about it is that they're all systems of control. So communism could work, but it's all a top-down control piece. And if you see any communist systems, they've been oligarchies where very few people are plutocrats. They have all the wealth, the power, and everything like that, and very few people actually. It's not a true distribution of wealth. What could work is like a system like anarcho syndicalism or something along those lines, but a system that I see is something where the micro feeds into the macro, where you are living as a complete and whole being. You're creating then a relationship. We talked about this at dinner. You're creating a relationship with the world around you. You're creating divine partnership or harmonic partnership where you love yourself so much that you're creating then a partner that loves you as well. And you're
Mhm.
not taking your pain and trauma out on your partner. You're not taking it out on the world. You're having personal responsibility for how you're acting within the world. And then from that, you're forming children and communities and connected networks. And from that, you have an ism. Like if you look in the Chinese school, you had Confucianism,
Mhm.
which I mean, I know very little about these things. I'm just going to speak about what I do know. But these are systems or ways to create mores and values and to inculcate them and put them in a way to where people can follow it like rules and laws. But if you sublimate that, if you go beyond that, then you're going into Buddhism, where
Mhm.
you're aware of the minds and the thoughts,
Right.
right? And you're becoming then aware that they're just like clouds that are passing within your mind and they're not real. You make them real by energizing them, but you don't have to hold on to the thought. And if you transcend that, you move into the world of Taoism, where you're moving as the river and you're moving as the way. And you're not necessarily thinking in the way of thoughts, but you're allowing yourself to be moved,
Mhm.
and you're allowing the universe to speak through you
Mhm.
and to communicate as you. So what I'm really communicating is we have to borrow from the quote from Einstein. You can't solve a problem at the level of consciousness that created it. You have to transcend the consciousness that has created or is creating problems. And when you've done that, you're able to move to a consciousness that's not creating the same problems. This is something I had an issue with for years because there's all these charities within the world, and if you're part of a charity, more power to you. But what I felt was there were so many charities and so many causes, but the leaks and the holes within the family and the communities and the neighborhoods and the work situations. You're a parent, so are you around your child? No, you're not. Is your work even related to your home? More often than not, it isn't. You aren't around your children. Who's raising the kids? The state?
Mhm.
It's not the community. So who are the wisdom keepers? And what's happening as far as the rites of passage for us? And we're of a similar age. For my rite of passage was I could smoke cigarettes, I could join the army, I could gamble, and I could drink. Those are my rights. And there's a part of me that feels angry with that. But those are my rites of passage. This is not a wisdom piece. This is not like a sacred go into the wilderness and find God and find yourself.
Mhm.
And there were very few people around me saying, Ben, you have this gift of whatever it might be, speaking, writing, communicating, energy. It was something that we had to discover. And now that we have kids of our own, my role in their life is to help them to find who they are and to dust off and polish that gem and have it shine by the time they're an adult.
Mhm.
So they're not scratching their head and wondering who the hell they are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's where it honestly starts. You get the chain where, like you said, the cigarettes, the war. These are the things that you're expected to do. This is what we imprint on ourselves. And then now it's up to the individual to say, enough of that. It's not about that. Now I'm going to teach my seed that, you know what? You don't have to judge. You don't have to hate.
Yeah.
You can spend a lot more time reflecting and looking at yourself in the mirror and diagnosing yourself. You can learn to set your ego aside. The world is not going to be what you want it to be.
Mhm.
It's going to be this sometimes. So expect and prepare for this. I think we do it as far as the people that sit in this room.
Yeah.
The hard part is going to be we set our kids up for that type of train of thought.
Mhm.
But what we can't set them up for is it not being perceived well by others.
Right. The world they enter into. Patton Oswalt talked about that. There
Right.
was a child in the playground, and the child was chasing after his child with like a stick or something like that. And the parents of the child that was chasing his child with a stick was almost like goading them on or ignoring it.
Mhm.
And he was trying to raise his child to be genteel and kind and everything else. And he was wondering, asking himself the question, am I setting my child up to be ruled by people with sticks?
Mhm.
Right.
You know? But that's a gamble that you have to take. And I don't think that just because you're in a bar with people, it doesn't mean that because part of the bar is fighting that you have to join the fray. During any world war, there were places around the globe where people were experiencing peace.
Hmm.
And even we just visited Europe. There were even places within Europe where the war, I wouldn't say it didn't touch, but the war, they were not besieged by war. They were not necessarily fighting actively within the war. They might have been contributing in some way. They might have been experiencing it, or some distant place within a rainforest. They may have been experiencing the consciousness of it. But we don't have to get pulled in those ways. That's a choice point. That's something that we have choice for as people. And we have to choose. And with the communities we belong to and the spaces we occupy, if we aren't seeing it, we have to bring it.
Right.
If you want to see it, you have to bring it. You have to be, well, like to borrow from Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world.
Hmm.
If you aren't seeing it, then it is incumbent upon you to bring it into whatever spaces you occupy.
Hmm.
And that's the only way that it actually seats. And so, an excitement I have, because I've always felt small. These ideas feel big, but I felt like, well, how does Ben do it? Ben doesn't do it.
Hmm.
That's an egoic trap. I'm not doing anything. I'm tapped into, just like you guys are, a wave point or a rhythm or a radio station within the ethers. I'm just broadcasting that signal. And anyone that's activated, they're doing it wherever they're at.
Can't pick up on it.
Right. And we are then activating one another.
Hmm.
And so I'm not in the military.
Hmm.
I'm not working in a restaurant. I'm not working in a bookstore. But someone who's connected to that world might be listening right now
Hmm.
or at some point, and something activates within them. And then they live in me and I live in them. And I'm walking as them in that space. We talk about like the Christed state or the Buddha state. This is an undifferentiated state. This is not just like a Buddha, then you have millions and millions of people. This is a state of pure union
Hmm.
where everything's collapsing into a state of union with all that is.
Hmm.
So people are activating their bodhisattva or the Buddha state or their Christed state, which Christ means anointed one. If they're activating that, then they're walking as the Christ. I used to say to Christian patients, Christ didn't want you to worship him. Christ wanted you to become Christed, to emulate, to walk as Christ, and to walk in a Christed state.
And then what do you say to those that'll yell out to you blasphemy?
I mean, they can. They can, and they're well within their rights to do so.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to try to convince them anything to the contrary.
Right.
That's a fool's errand.
Yeah.
You can't convince someone who doesn't want to hear, whose mind is not open. And I'm not arrogant enough to believe that what I'm saying can't be countermanded in some way.
Hmm.
But this is what I believe, and this is what I feel.
Hmm.
And when I'm sharing as words are what I'm going into as a feeling inside me, and it's coming then as a translation of the feeling that I'm experiencing. I'm just putting words to the feeling I have.
Hmm.
But if someone doesn't believe it, that's well within their rights to do. I don't want to convince the world of anything anymore. I don't, but there are people where they hear this and it's like water to their soul. They're like, finally, honey, I was just talking about this the other day.
Hmm.
I've been thinking this.
Hmm.
And then this ginger,
Yeah.
what did you say earlier?
Heathen.
Ginger
Yeah.
heathen. This ginger
heathen.
heathen. Trademark.
Yeah.
This ginger heathen said this, and but I didn't say it. I can't take ownership to any of it.
A lot of people think it's going to take something profound to change the course of man. With that being said, what do you think that looks like? Something profound. Do you think
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
so? You don't see anything like otherworldly?
Yeah. Oh my God, that pit bull is like right next to that mink's cat. And they're procreating.
Yeah.
It's a crossbreed species.
Chimeras.
Chimeras.
We need chimeras.
The snake has a tail.
What causes people not to live the life that they can't live anymore is that there's no room anymore. Like we talked about leaving relationship. You and I both went through divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I have no enmity or ill will. I'm grateful for everything that I've experienced, everything I've gone through. But there's a certain point where you're walking a path and there's just no more room. You're like Alice in Wonderland taking the mushroom and you're in this expanded space in a tiny room and you can't get any smaller and there's nowhere else to move within there. So there's only one way to go, which is through the door.
Yep.
And if you don't know what that door is, it's the only place in your life right now that's open. So I think that's what it takes. And again, micro, macro, we say on a macro scale, you can say that's happening cataclysmically across cultures. You know, we saw elements of that within COVID. There's no reason to believe that something like that couldn't happen again. And I'm not a doomsday sayer.
Right.
I have no interest in that. But I believe though, when it's time to change because the music is changing and it's time to dance to another song, we dance to another song. We're not living in the dark ages like we once did.
I do think COVID. So imagine this like proverbial record playing, cosmic record playing, and we're going about our lives pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Introduce COVID. It's literally like the DJ scratched the needle across the record, right?
Right.
It was like, no. I got a better track.
Right.
Try this one out, right? Divorces go up, people contemplating on, like we talked about, bringing out their own business.
Entrepreneurship goes up.
Yeah,
right.
people have these self thoughts of like, do I really want to do this job? And what am I doing with myself? I think we were that was the catalyst to jumpstart a new way of thinking, because that was the time where the world actually slowed down, literally.
Yeah. There's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go. And we had to retreat to our homes, and we had to more so important, retreat to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of time for me in that situation, I did a lot of diving into my like consciousness and am I really happy and what makes me happy? And is this just, am I just wasting time? I'm getting older.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dying. Look at my skin. My hair is turning gray. Oh my God, I spent all this time doing jack shit with my life. And it was probably some of the most scariest thoughts that I've ever had. Because I was looking at my own mortality. And I was frightful for it, like of it. And I'm just like, if I'm thinking this way, and I had this thought, truly others are thinking this way right now. And I was seeing it on TV, and even then people weren't going outside. So what were they doing inside? A lot of these people woke up for the first time and go, I'm married to you?
Right.
Really? When the fuck did I make that decision? And we have 2 kids?
Who are these people in the house?
Right.
Who are my children?
Yeah. And they slowly started to go, well, we don't resonate well at all, do we?
No.
I was so distracted by that record that was playing that I lost track of my life. I lost track of myself. It's almost as if the cosmos gave us a reset.
I wonder how many children realized they didn't have what they wanted from their parents. And I wonder how many parents didn't realize, like you said, wait, we have kids and they're not just put on the bus and off to school they go. And when they get home from work or wherever, these kids come back and, there's so much connection loss and so much time loss. I think COVID, and I hate to say it like this, I think it was needed in many ways.
Well, what is 2020 in the field of optometry? But it's perfect vision.
Right.
And you heard that a lot too within spiritual circles. 2020 was perfect vision. And that's when COVID happened. And working every day in practice at that time, because my practice was still up and running, I kept the door open. And a lot of people that were coming in were elderly, people that weren't supposed to come in, but they were so lonely that they just wanted to be hugged and held and connected with.
And what was that practice again? Just so the viewers know, what was your practice?
Oh, well, I did chiropractic, I did energy work, and I did functional medicine.
Okay.
So I do labs on some people, I would do supplements on some people, I would do energy work on anyone that was open to it. And I was trained as a chiropractor. So I went to chiropractic school and got a doctorate within chiropractic, which if you want to know how to do that, you just send off UPCs from Cracker Jacks or like a cereal box.
Is it just that easy? Is it really just that easy?
Just send it to you in the mail, yeah.
I got to go check the back of my cornflakes box.
I'd eat so many Apple Jacks.
Yeah. Some things aren't as easy as they appear to be. So my wife says, oh, babe, you could be a lawyer.
Sure.
And I actually almost entertained that shit until I looked at the LAT or that test. I think it's the LAT.
I forget what it is, yeah.
And I saw the statistics of people that passed this test. It's one of the hardest tests that are out there.
Right.
And I looked at that, so it did discourage me a lot because I know my capability. I'm just some dumb beat cop, right? That just makes music. So I'm like, no, babe, I don't think I can fucking be a lawyer. I'm sure if I put my energy into it, I could, but that's not going to be up in my treehouse. You know what I mean? That's not going to be easily digest where it's an overnight kind of job.
Right.
Yeah. If it's your path, then you'll open up and you'll find the right teachers and the right experiences at the time. One of my favorite lines is from Joseph Campbell, he says, if it's your path, all the doors open.
Right.
So you know it's your path because every door is opening to the
Yeah.
experience. And I wasn't like a Rhodes Scholar or anything along those lines, but in chiropractic school, it's not a walk in the park. It was 3.5 years of, I mean, I was taking 30 credit hours every 3 months. It was a lot of the same curriculum you'd have with the medical school without the pharmacology and those pieces. And the attrition rate was high. And we had to take boards and everything else. But I really wanted to learn how to heal. And so that's what led me into that field. And then I practiced until I felt an understanding that the healing actually happens from within the person. If you can share the foundational pieces, then the person can heal themselves. And they can actually activate the healing within themselves and have something that's sustainable. And so I wanted to lend my voice more into that world and teach people how to run energy, make connections inside of themselves, feed themselves. And I wanted to be a voice for everything I carry inside and to activate the healer inside of anyone that's interested. Because it's something that we all carry innately inside of us. But in 2020, people were coming in and I was just acting as a means to love and connect. And it's as you guys were describing, some families were getting closer. Some people would come in, I'd have some dads come in and they would say, I'm riding my bike with my children. I'm spending time with my family. This is a great time. I feel bad for saying it. I'm having a great time. I'm working from home finally. I'm spending more time with my family. Other people had the realization that who they were married to was not who they could ride their lives out with because they had to then spend space and time with that person. It's like when people go to bed at night, and they have that moment of silence that they haven't had all day long. And all of a sudden, all the thoughts come rushing in. That was kind of like what COVID was. They had to face all the shower thoughts and all the intrusive thoughts that they had had. And they had to live that down. And alcoholism had gone up. And not to be negative, but child abuse and things like that had also gone up. People did not know how to face. And so some relationships which were not meant to transcend had broken down. But what was untrue was shown. And what a lot of people experienced, and again, the listeners will have their own experience with this, but they saw government differently. They saw the world differently. They saw the health organizations differently. They saw people differently than they had before. They had to reconfigure the universe that they occupied. And that's what we're talking about. How do we reach this place where we are connecting differently? COVID was a bump compared to what would be like a world war, some sort of cataclysmic event. And I don't wish that upon humanity or anything along those lines.
Right.
Well, what I'm saying is when something becomes untenable, we can't live it anymore. You look at the world we occupy, and this is not meant to be negative, but we have many households that have one family. A lot of people that are one parent. A lot of people I worked with had no community that they had surrounded themselves with. They had distracted themselves within their lives. They were working 40, 50 hours a week. In the 1960s, having one job could pay for a whole household. And you could have a car, and you could have the white picket fence, and you could have the house and everything for one income. And now we're living in a place where two incomes is not enough. And the average household has over $10,000 worth of debt. What we're seeing is the untenable state. And it's not meant to be scary. It's meant to open us to what it is that brings harmony, because that's what the universe is asking for. Empty your pockets, free yourself, live in a harmonic state, fight if you want. And there's a quote that goes along the lines of, let go or be dragged. I feel like we're sprinting towards that right now. My wife and I, what I'm discussing with you guys, not that we're ahead of the curve, but we're listening to the music. And the music is playing in the background right now. We're listening to the music. And it's taking us to the ever-shifting world. The world is in flux. Nothing is static. When you saw the MAGA hats years ago, Make America Great Again, at what point? At what point? For women, it wasn't great at a certain point. People of color, it wasn't great at a certain point. But what point are we talking about? Are we talking about an egalitarian state as far as wages and things like that are concerned? That wasn't the case either. What are we talking about? But there's a feeling. And that's what people are tapped into. It's a feeling of the kind of life that they want to live, a connected world where things feel safe and okay. And that's the world that we can reify and create together.
Right. In that it was the ideal, right? Maybe it wasn't pinpoint for most, but if you're looking too hard, you're looking too hard. Maybe the whole Make America Great Again was just that ideal of what America was supposed to represent. To whoever was wanting that, But that slogan, Make America Great Again, it's a Kanye West slogan. It doesn't have context.
Sure, it's open to interpretation.
So how I look at it was like, oh, okay, big steel, the automobile industry.
Tariffs.
The the point in which people had this freedom to do as they will and to protest and to live as they want and believe in what they want, you know, in my mind, I go, oh yeah, that's what made America great. But that's just in my mind.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what Trump meant. I don't know what conservatives mean. I don't know how Democrats look at it. I don't even know what it means to the individual.
You know what? Trump meant $5 footlongs for everyone.
And you
That's
know
what it was.
what? That's context.
Yeah.
See, and I would take that foot long, sir. I would eat it for lunch.
Maybe it meant
I don't have to have all the
maybe
fixings
it meant,
on it.
No.
Maybe it meant bring back government cheese. Like, I have no idea. That to me, this world lacks that one thing.
The context.
Context.
Yeah, because you can speak in nebulous terms and you can move people through, but then they're filling in the blanks. And again, not to negate, but that's an issue people have with politics. Every 4 years, someone promises something and they speak in nebulous terms, and then they get into power. And my own passage into politics was 2008. I had fallen into love with Ron Paul, but I wasn't Republican, nor was I libertarian. I just felt like he was telling the truth. And then when he bowed out, I was like, well, this Obama character, let's follow him. And I put my weight behind that as well. But then what I saw was a free lunch for the financial industry, which had created the 2008 collapse. You had Timothy Geithner put in as the Secretary of the Treasury, where they were overseeing the New York Fed, and it was like the inmates were running the asylum. And then you had the healthcare industry changes, where all of a sudden people were insured, but the cost of healthcare had gone up like 3 times.
Right.
And who actually wrote the legislation was largely the pharmaceutical industry, and you know, in these lobbyist interests and things like that. So I became more and more cynical around that time. And then since that point, I've just been looking at it with more of a clear lens. I was into Bernie Sanders at one point. You know, I've been all over the spectrum. But I was just listening for people that are passionate, who as kids say, had receipts. They've been communicating for something for some time. But then you actually see them get some power, and you see that they don't have any teeth. What I saw with Sanders, and again, this is not to negate, but I saw him completely hand over his movement to the establishment. And why the establishment lost in 2016 to Trump, it's because Trump was running as a demagogue. He's running as a populist, you know, an outsider against an insider.
Right.
And there was no chance that Clinton had it to win.
Right.
But the myopic view of the Democratic Party at the time was not to run Sanders, even though Sanders probably would have won against Trump.
And Trump didn't need bureaucrats.
No, he didn't.
He had his own funding,
but
right?
He didn't need lobbyists either.
He filled his cabinet with those people, though, and that was the irony. The very people that he spoke against is who he filled his cabinet with.
Right.
And then he talked about draining the swamp. The swamp monsters came after him.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and again, not to speak negative of Mike Pence or anyone else, but or anyone else that he had within. I'm forgetting names right now, and this is not a political podcast, anyways. But
Right.
But he had spoken one way and then done something else completely. But what people liked with him is that he was speaking his mind, and they felt like he was actually communicating.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. When you resonate with the people,
when people think that there's a person that's for them, and they feel like, what else do we have to lose?
Right.
I mean, right now we're in a situation where we have to choose the better devil.
But we don't.
You know,
we are the people we've been waiting for. That's the whole point of what we're saying right now. We're the people we've been waiting for. If you have placed your power outside of yourself, and this is the story of going full circle, the divine right of kings, moving into the Enlightenment movement of the 1700s, which bred the Constitution and everything else. We're talking about like Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau and all these different people. Moving into the government we have now, it has to be something where we step up and we begin to have stewardship and custodianship of the world.
And that's what I was trying to convey to you. How do we do that? To me, it seems like 2 things have to happen. We have to be confronted with our own demise, or there has to be something otherworldly to take place.
Yeah. Well, Rome may be burning as well, and you know, you can play the fiddle with Cicero, even though that's apocryphal. But I think it's a matter of just caring for the spaces you occupy. It can be something as simple as cleaning up your home, um, being present with whoever's in front of you, connecting in the world that you're in. And if enough people just did that, we would live in a connected world.
So
But that makes me believe. That makes me believe we're far beyond that, Ben. We need something major to halt the brakes on this train because the train has now lost the conductor and it's screaming out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there may be a couple of hundred passengers that are aware this has to stop. We have to be in this for the betterment of the people. We have to be ants in a colony and help ourselves grow. But majority of the passengers on the train are either reading their book, smacking their kid to get off the damn seat,
Yeah.
and they're just moving on the train. There something has to break the cycle. I mean, I get it.
Sure.
Little increments and micro movements of people doing good, and it eventually turns into a snowball effect. That's plausible, but I feel not anymore.
Well, have you ever heard the Maharishi effect before?
No.
And I don't know how scientifically accurate this is, but this is just what was stated through the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Institute, the Transcendental Meditation. And there's probably other names for this as well. But the Maharishi effect is where you have 1% of the population. And again, I'm trying to remember this from memory, but 1% of the population meditating, you'll see what they were stating about 25% or more decrease in violence and crime and things along those lines. So, and then Dr. Hawkins, the work of Dr. Hawkins, again, some of this may be apocryphal for some people, but this is just what I'm stating. My belief is through noetics or other schools of science that we'll actually be able to build upon this at some point and actually create more credence to what it is I'm saying. But with Dr. Hawkins's work, he said that for every soul that reaches 700 on his scale of consciousness, this is a state of unconditional love. You see an exponential shift in consciousness for humanity. So what I see happening right now is I see many souls coming online, and what was esoteric is now available. Anything you want to know is available on the internet. This conversation we're having right now, I couldn't have found 20 years ago.
Right.
And now we're just having it like in the course of a Saturday that we spent together. And this is becoming the norm. So as more people are coming online, this is creating a consciousness shift. It's creating a harmonic resonance throughout the globe. And whether people are aware or not, like 10 plus years ago when I was in practice, if I mentioned yoga to some people, I actually lost patience because I mentioned yoga. Like not even yoga as like the deeper understanding of what yoga is. Yoga is not stretches. Those are like asanas. Yoga is actually the practice of a yogi. And I would mention yoga, the asanas, the movements, the postures. I would mention that to people that had back issues or otherwise, or were looking to find some peace. And I lost some patients because of that. They said, I like you, Dr. Ben, but you know, what you're describing is OTD of the devil. You know, I can't vibe with that. I had a lady send me an email that I recall where she said, you know, you mentioned yoga and I can't come in to see you anymore. Fast forward like 3 or 4 or 5 years after that, and the same type of person, the same archetype was coming in talking about Christian yoga or talking about how they were doing the yoga thing down the street. And they might even say namaste to me, or now they're wearing like the prayer bracelets, but they're still Christian. And it became part of Overton's window of what was acceptable within their life.
Right.
It doesn't have to take a long time.
Right.
And that's what we see is like what it appears to be incremental. It doesn't have to be. And just because the train is going off the cliff doesn't mean we have to be in the train. You know, just like if there's a bar brawl, it doesn't mean I have to jump into the bar brawl. If the world needs to fight, it can fight.
Right.
If anyone needs to enter into the fray and fight with that, they can. I don't have to. But that's me taking my energy, not getting pulled by impulse. My impulse, my natural impulse, is to speak consciousness and connect people. If I'm doing that, I'm doing it unimpeded, then I'm actually in my power. I don't have to reclaim it from anyone. And I can draw people and connect with people in that space. I don't have to go into the world to fight or claim anything because I'm just giving myself the freedom. I'm granting myself the freedom now to communicate the freedom that's inside me. And I'm not letting that impede me from actually living. You're only fighting the outside if you're still claiming the power that you've left outside of yourself. So some people will actually follow that train because they believe that that's where the power is, or they'll follow the politicians, or they'll follow the systems. And every system has to break down at some point. I mean, look at history. Every system breaks down. I'm not wishing that upon this system or any system. Every system breaks down and resets itself. Every forest grows trees. The trees fall or burn, and then there's new growth. Every system resets itself.
Mhm.
Whether you're talking about yugas, which is like in the Buddha cycle, where we may have done this and we're part of another yuga right now, like if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Mhm.
and we're living out a cycle, we've already done this. We're just we're taking ourselves to a point of pure freedom. We can grant ourselves that whenever we want to. And something that I'd like to, for lack of a better word, preach to people is if you have something you want to say or do, don't let anything impede you. Just start doing it and create that within the world. And if you have to claim it from an outside, you have to quit a job or you have to leave a relationship, so be it.
So be it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Let's fast forward. Let's just say what we're speaking now manifests and it comes true.
Mhm.
We're ultimately talking about a utopia.
Yeah, but that's also a loaded term, isn't it?
It's
It
loaded, but
is.
it's as close as I can come to like
Sure.
a grand unified consciousness that lives harmonious with each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we reach the magnitude of this state,
Yeah.
this conscious state. What then happens to the physical body? What then happens to the experience of the earth life?
Well, you're talking about transcending to like sixth dimensional consciousness or beyond. If you listen to Matthias de Stefano, he talks a lot about the different, um, a lot about the different um, dimensions of consciousness.
Mhm.
So you can look at this is just my understanding, but you can look at consciousness as like you could look at a city, right? You have an individual, right, and then you have a family, and then you have a community, and then you have a city, and then you have a state, and you have a country. As you're accumulating consciousness, you're actually accumulating more and more of the divine, or more of the ocean,
Mhm.
more and more of God. And so you can say an angel, as an example, would be a social memory complex on a higher dimensional plane. It's more of an aggregation and more of an accumulation of consciousness. So if we're vibing in sixth dimension or beyond, it's like a spiritual orgy in essence, where
Right.
we are not disentangled. But where you and I went a moment ago with meditation, you said it didn't feel like it didn't feel like there was anyone else in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would leave meditation, I would know that the room was humming when there was only one body.
Mhm.
But the whole body became the room or the space. And it happens anyways. When you're talking to an audience, or is it a plural? You've been a great audience tonight. That's a singular noun.
Mhm.
An audience is a singular noun,
Right.
right? A population could be considered as a body. A constituency
Mhm.
could be considered that as well. So it would collapse to an agreed upon frequency state or agreed upon state of consciousness. We're already in an agreement of consciousness right now. We're in the United States. There's an agreement to how we live, but we are amending that as a people right now, right?
Right.
So it's just society is just predicated on what we are agreeing to live in as a consciousness. Kind of like what is the tempo? What is the meter?
Right.
What is what
So what's the end game? We want everybody to catch on.
well, it depends on what end game you're speaking of, because
Well,
the end game is union and
okay,
with
okay.
source itself.
So maybe I need to,
But as a people,
as a people, like what's in your mind, what satisfies you as making it as collective souls? What do you perceive when everybody is of enlightenment and the masses are all having this type of conversation? What do you think takes place during this type of lifestyle?
well, I mean, one I believe the universe is in constant flux. I
Mhm.
don't believe that it's in a static state. But if we were just speaking about one point within space and time,
Mhm.
I would say that it would be a place where um, our interactions are predicated upon peace and not war,
Mhm.
where I see myself in you. I don't see other. I'm engaging with the universe as though it's my mirror. And I'm engaging with everyone as though they're an extension of myself. And I'm using this reality not as an absolute, but as an extension of my being. So it's kind of like if I make faces in the mirror, right? I can say that I'm in the consciousness of making faces. If I'm growling in the mirror, if I'm crying in the mirror, I can say the mirror is now reflecting back to me my crying state. But if I'm in harmony, then it's creating a state where I'm giving to you, you're giving to me, and we become like the in and out breath of the universe. And we're in an open exchange of consciousness and connection together.
Mhm.
But it's an extension of my own being. So because I'm in a being inside myself of inner peace, then everything becomes an extension of that. And I'm walking as a being in inner peace, and I'm walking in being, in creation
Mhm.
with other beings,
Mhm.
but they aren't outside of me because we are in resonance together.
Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate. It sounds
Can
like,
you do this first? Like
well,
with
yeah,
the now I'm sold.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. Okay.
I smell sulfur.
Oh, really? Um, that what you're describing sounds like to me as the other side, as like enlightened souls,
Mhm.
and we're all at peace. We're all at one. We're all entangled. We're all aware of ourselves. We're all in love with the idea of consciousness, and we're learning. We're on a soul plane. We're all learning. It it sounds like you just literally we evolved from Earth now,
Right, and that's a
right?
fair point.
And
Yeah.
then and then it goes to, well, what was Earth really about then? Why would we come down here to make it like the other side? What would be the point to bring heaven on Earth?
Well, and there's nothing wrong with what's happening here from a soul perspective or from an experiential perspective.
Okay, but remember the guy that I was talking about? Okay, he's the circus carnival guy. He's on his soapbox and he says,
Mhm.
"You look like a fine young ginger. Step right up. You want to go to Earth? I know you're sick and tired of loving each other and yourselves and your self-indulgence. Why don't you come to this planet and get a real wallop what it's like to batter
I'd
yourself?"
like to think that a carnival barker brought me here.
Okay, so
I'll take a ticket.
yeah, you look like you could use some bruising for the cruising.
Yeah.
You want to know what it's like to be moited? Step right into the Earth experience.
Yeah.
At what point do we take away the Earth experience? Do we really want to change things? And this is going to take us outside of this conversation. I'm just going to bring something else in.
Yeah, please do.
Do we really want to change the earthly experience if Earth is a battleground to get your lessons, to make your soul, your spirit level up?
Well, I mean that's a double-edged question, because if you've transcended the earth plane, it doesn't mean the earth plane is gone. It means souls can still be having that experience, and it may not be your experience.
Right.
So we're still talking about an individuated experience. We're talking about the matrix. We are plugged into a consciousness program,
Mhm.
and we're really talking about the individual, because what I'm communicating could be experienced as the monad or the one all-seeing eye in that particular dimensional state. But if it wouldn't negate the other state existing as a superposition, as something that was um, occurring uh, in its own space and time. You see what I'm saying? It's still something that could be happening simultaneous to. You would not have to negate or get rid of. But if we're
Mhm.
talking to people through this medium who are wanting to reach a transcendent state,
Mhm.
then they're maybe done getting moited
Mhm.
and
Moited.
and having whatever experience they're having, and they go, I'm tired of getting
Okay,
poked
but-
with the stabby thing here.
Right,
I'd like
Okay,
to.
okay, but once you're done
I
being
follow you on that.
yeah, but once you're done being moited, okay, once
Sure.
that's done here in the physical plane, and
Yeah.
let's just say you get caught, you go to jail, you get the gas chamber, and now you're able to shed the body because we've put it into the existence of the physical self.
Yeah.
And now you have gone back to the state of consciousness and back to the other side. We're going to just call it the other side. You can also look back and go, I learned so much.
Mhm.
Now my loving soul knows what it's like to have that happen or to
Right.
have this done to me.
It's Neil Donald Walsh's Little Soul in the Sun,
Yes.
where he said, I'm going to remember so that you can remember, but you're going to do something to potentially harm me. But
Right.
as long as I remember, then I can, and that's the promise that's being made in the book. I'll remember so that we don't forget.
Right.
But I'm going to hurt you potentially in this
And
life.
I'm going to I'm so in love with what you want as an experience.
Yeah.
I am going to surrender a part of my loving essence to give you that.
Because it's a great gift.
It's a great
When-
sacrifice.
This is an abstraction, but it's a great gift when then someone perpetuates an ill upon us. If that's what we've created here as an
Mhm.
earthly experience, to experience and transcend, and to, as one of my teachers would say, go to the earth school to learn a lesson.
Mhm.
So, But my wife goes into a transcendent state with that too, and says, I am both. I am the murderer and I'm the murdered.
Mm-hmm.
There's something you have within Catholicism, the Stations of the Cross, right? We were at a St. Mary's um, temple or ground. I believe it was in Wisconsin. We driven past it, and she felt drawn to it. We were walking through this area of the Stations of the Cross, and I'd seen the final Station of the Cross, and it was the persecution of Christ. Well, this final station is Mother Mary and the rock, but leading up to it, there's a point where he's being nailed, right? And what he's doing, and this is what came as a revelation. What he's doing is he's actually Christ is actually loving and forgiving within that space,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he's being nailed, and to transcend the cross or to forgive all of sin. How do we forgive all of sin? We have to actually forgive the transgression that's happened by transcending it. And so it's never happened because we're not carrying the memory of it as trauma anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what forgiveness does. It actually wipes the slate clean of the initial or the pain or the trauma that was part of what we were carrying. So what I saw the person kneeling, and I saw Christ as undifferentiated. And I saw the act as wiped clean, so to speak, through the act of love and forgiveness. And so if we're able to reach a transcendent state, either through a life review or crossing the veil, then that forgiveness state, which is what is spoken about within Christianity and within Christ, is actually cleaning the slate all the time. Or if you go into like the Bhagavad Gita,
Mm-hmm.
where Arjuna is seeing the fight and he's seeing it from a very personal perspective, and he sees his brothers and his countrymen and people that he's known all fighting together, and he can't go into the fray. But then all of a sudden, I believe he sees Krishna change and then consume the entire battlefield, and he sees it as just this movement of energy. And then all of a sudden, it's not personal anymore. Nor is it personal when a tree falls or burns to create new growth.
Mm-hmm.
Nor has it been personal anytime anyone has transgressed me, which has forced me into a growth or an arc.
Mm-hmm.
I had a shift years ago where I left practice where I was at, and it wasn't easy, but it's like I had to be pushed.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that I was connected to at the time didn't know what they were doing, or they did know what they were doing, maybe on a deeper level. But I feel grateful because someone had to play that role, because I was not going to get pushed. I was not going to push myself at the time. I needed someone to stand
Right.
and
Yeah.
push me.
Yeah, sometimes you need that. Yeah, you need that push in a certain direction, and sometimes you may not even know what direction that is. Most of the time, you say, "Yeah, I want to go this direction," but that may not be what you want. I mean,
Yeah.
what you want, but it may not be what you need.
Yeah.
How open are you to this next subject? I want to pose.
We're not doing spin the bottle, are we?
It's back at you. So here we as the universe would have
Very
it.
awkward.
What do you know about the tellings of Anunnaki?
I don't know anything about that. You're talking. Are we talking about like Egyptian?
It's
connected with
it's derived from Egypt, right? From
Oh, we need my wife in here. She knows about that world.
okay,
I'm a neophyte. Everything I'm describing has been like my own
Ancient
personal experience.
Mesopotamia.
yeah.
I'm happy to be elucidated though. I'm not very aware of it.
Okay, so you're
It's-
probably better at telling.
It's Sumerian context.
Mhm.
So it's ancient Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
And supposedly there's these Anunnaki gods.
Mhm.
I mean, but the problem is there's so many stories that haven't been vetted and some that have. And you have the emerald tablets,
Which
of-
isn't that the Hermetic?
right. It has some
Yeah.
hermetic properties in
Yeah.
it. And so it told a story
Yeah.
of these deities that come from the heavens. And they created man,
Mhm.
but they only created us to work for them, mine their gold, and essentially procreate
Mhm.
because we're easy to control. And they didn't want to do it themselves. In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot I'm not divulging because I'm just not 100% sure as to how this all came about. But I don't know where you wanted to go with this.
I just wanted to so. I'm just changing gears. I just want to know: do you think it's possible,
That we're being controlled by an outside.
not just
No,
control, but that we
we've been
were
manufactured
and
from
that humans, the human civilization was something that was actually grown here on Earth, which gives cadence and relevance to people's thought as how
But-
come everything on Earth looks like it's from Earth but humans,
But it's more
Yeah.
than it's more
especially
than,
how they've evolved.
it's
Right.
more than us being created by these said deities. It's they only allow certain genome to be activated within us.
Hmm.
And one of the most important ones that they really activated into our DNA that was left in the junk DNA was the worship gene
Hmm.
and the sacrifice
Right.
gene.
Right.
Am I
Yeah,
correct on
yeah.
this? So, which people say it's a reason why we can't physically or mentally come out of this suppressed state, that there's this active gene that dominates over us,
Yeah.
and we want to worship something bigger and better, and we don't want to break the chains and get outside the box on this. We're actually bred to do exactly this: fight, enslave. And that's a belief that's been pushed around a lot lately.
It is, and they actually have like these tablets that were,
You can actually
Literally.
read these
Yeah.
tablets yourself.
you know, like, and it is the newspaper of that time, right?
Right.
It may not be as wordy as how we would say spaceship or propulsion, but they would use terms like flying chariots and fire gods. And so they were actually seeing things like UFOs, and you can see them in paintings from the past. And,
Yeah.
you know,
So,
Are-
so the question would be,
are you open to that idea that
Yes.
maybe it's
is it
not
plausible?
what we think as far as, you know,
Well,
What-
that's a limitation point on our potential,
Right.
what we are, and it means that something outside of us is controlling us. That's I guess what I'm assuming from what you're communicating, and I've heard different derivations of that before, where I don't buy into it. It's just my own personal take. Where I don't buy into it is I don't believe there's anything outside of me. I don't know how you can be constructed from something that is all interwoven and interconnected together and somehow be separate from it.
Mhm.
So any belief structure like that for me becomes a dead end,
Mhm.
because then I'm a victim within this world, and there's only so far I can go because I have DNA that doesn't allow me to.
Mhm.
Worship has actually been one of the most difficult things for me to ascribe to within my life,
Mhm.
because for whatever reason that gene hasn't activated within me.
Right.
And yet that's actually one of the easiest ways to form union. They call it bhakti yoga,
Mhm.
but that's one of the easiest ways. It's to reach a devotional state of
Mhm.
worship, and you can then enter into states of divine bliss and reach transcendent states. If we were controlled in a way that was inexorable, then how can we reach states of bliss and love, and how can we be I see like microcosms of this, but how can we create something beautiful together and transcend that?
Right. But would you chalk that up as evolution? Like we're growing outside of our programmed DNA gene?
I've heard some people say that. I had one lady who would come to meditation, and she would say, like, she would announce it to the group. She would say, you know, we have additional strands of DNA that just came online, and she would share it as though that was public news. And I don't discount that either.
Mhm.
But with those pieces, this is just me.
Mhm.
Okay. Do I have to believe that in order to go into a state that is ineffable,
Mhm.
that has no words?
Right.
I can enter that state whenever I want to.
Mhm.
And in that state, I actually have fewer beliefs and a fewer structure around limitations behind that belief. But I think the beliefs can be helpful because they can help you to have something to grasp onto
Right.
as you're climbing the ladder. And I'm still climbing the ladder as a soul myself, but I can go into a state of meditation where I leave my body. I can go into a state of deep connection. And it's not uncommon for me to cry within a day because my heart activates. I see myself in another. I see an act of kindness, and I just feel this transcendent state of love. So could we be in a point of evolution?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
What does Ben say if a UFO were to drop right now in the backyard and it lit up like a Christmas tree, lights everything up in this room, beckons us to go out, it speaks to us and
I would say, Lamar, it looks like there's someone outside. You want to go check? Real quick for me?
Okay, yeah. And I'm
Hell
like,
no.
no, you know,
Yeah.
you know, see, half of my
And if you
black
come back in and you're like,
No,
not
no,
mentioning
Ben.
any-
Half of my black side, and I would like to say this is
Huh.
common with all black people.
Sure.
We don't investigate shit,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a thing about no, we're not going to do that
Yeah.
because that shit spells disaster, right? But
Yeah.
my white gene says we are very curious and we need to investigate highly what's going on out there because it can't be in my backyard.
Yeah.
I need an explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but what does that do to your paradigm? Like, how does that?
Well, why would that be mutually exclusive from the paradigm I'm
No,
communicating?
no, no. And I'm not trying to say like
No.
you're stuck in a way but
Yeah.
what is that? I'm just
Oh, yeah, no,
curious. What does a UFO do to Ben?
Well, nothing salacious, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you getting probed.
Okay,
by
yeah,
any
I
means.
wasn't going to say the P word, but you said it.
Yeah. But to
What-
you, I'm curious because you have a mind that I am very intrigued by.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by your vernacular. I'm intrigued by your wordplay. I'm intrigued by your
thought
thoughts.
process.
I'm
yes.
intrigued by your openness on how you are spiritually connected.
I'm very much in favor of it.
Yes, and you
Thank
can
you.
ground.
Well, I'm
and
running
you
for president in 2024.
Well, I
And
hope so.
As well as you should be.
but you ground me, and so
that's, yeah.
and so now I'm curious to know what is my guru, what does my mentor do?
I'm not your guru.
What, shut up, Ben. I'm telling the story.
Okay,
That's the
What is-
problem, Ben. You don't know when to shut
up. Yeah, yeah.
Where are my flowers?
Yeah, yeah. You don't get that shit here. You get a bottle of water.
Is this a dace?
No,
All
no.
right.
Yeah. But what happens to my guru when aliens come? What do you do?
Well, I mean, one, I would have to assume that was part of the experience that I needed to have or that I was creating. Because
Mhm.
I don't. Okay, so let me put it a different way. Did you ever meet someone who claims they can talk to the dead?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I've met many people like that.
Okay.
All right. Did you ever see Beetlejuice?
Oh, yes.
Remember Lydia from Beetlejuice?
Yes, sir.
No, she was partially dead. She wore black and she was kind of in that macabre, kind of gothic state.
Mhm.
Now, I'm painting with a broad brush. So maybe somebody listening who's like dressed in pink and has rainbows everywhere and talks to the dead. But most of the people that I spoke to who talked to the dead were tapped into that realm. It's like having a radio station. They were tapped into that realm because they were living from the dead. They were not necessarily walking in a world where they felt
Right.
connected and alive. And in many ways, they liked the shadow. They liked the dark. They liked the dead. They were communicating. And that wasn't where I was at. So I wasn't creating that as an experience. And there are some people that can see colors and do all these different things. There are people that can prognosticate your future. These are places I've touched upon with my life. But my aim is really just to walk in inner peace. So if I needed to create the UFO as an experience, then I would share what that experience was. And there was a point in my life where I was meeting a lot of people that were communicating that they were alien. I got a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're Arcturian."
Mm.
Oh, really? Or I had a friend that said, we vibe together. You know why? And I said, because we have an affinity. He said, because we're both Pleiadian. And for a while, I believed that I carried like a Pleiadian gene or something along those lines, like that. I was like part of an astral being because I was not meeting a lot of people like myself.
Mhm.
And, since that point, I met a lot of people that are vibing on that level and everything else. So is it possible that we actually carry that?
Right.
But how much of that did you call bullshit on? Do
Well,
you have a bullshit meter that
Yeah,
just says,
I do. But what?
"Ah,
But let's get into like word of the day, solipsism or something solipsistic. Like I don't know anything apart from my own experience, and it's not meant to be egoic. I don't know
Right.
anything beyond my own experience. So if you could come in here and you say, I believe in the Anunnaki
Mhm.
and I believe in the Emerald Tablets, I'm not going to sit here and negate that.
Mhm.
If you believe that there are beings that are your overlords, and I was actually part of an energy working technique at one point. I went to this technique in like Vermont, right? And at one point, we all held our hands together, and the lady who had created the technique was shouting. She said, to the aliens that were connecting into the room, leave the room, get out of here right now. You're not welcome. And when we sat back down, she said, one of you in the audience has brought these aliens into the room. And I was sitting there like a kid that was being called out in class. Like, was it me? Did I leave the door open? What happened?
Right.
But it was part of their belief structure. And they had a seminar the day before that I missed. And a lot of people that had that seminar communicated that night they went on a spaceship together, and they in dream state they were in that realm, right? And I sat in the room with them, and I couldn't negate it, but I also couldn't speak to it. It wasn't part of my experience. So this is the sticky wicket of it. If I communicate to you like a spiritual experience I've had, you can't tell me that I haven't had that,
Exactly.
and you can't tell me it's not true.
Exactly.
Right.
You could have that experience too, and then you could join me in it, right? And if you have a different experience, I can't tell you that that's not true. But we can get into the science. We talked about Terrence Howard briefly, and I don't want to go on great detail about this. But I would listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson and other people that were communicating, and they weren't seeing the world the same way, right? And people I was listening to that were rationalists in the scientific mind, I understood where they were coming from. They said, okay, if Terrence Howard is saying something, then put it into action right now. I want to see the engineering. I want to see the how it works within this world. And that really, I think, for people is the experiential state. If you can, like what you and I did with the meditation, if I can take you to a state of union and connection inside of yourself, you can't negate you had an experience.
Right.
You also can't negate the consciousness is non-local, and that's something that we're experiencing globally.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that the listener may have had the experience of either. And that's how I reconcile it. Is there's a million different pathways to the one.
I'll tell you something, and I wonder if I know she would remember. My wife and I, we were laying in bed, right? And I said, "Hey, humor me. Let's face each other, and let's put our foreheads together and our noses together." Now, I've never gotten this from anywhere, not that I know of or subconsciously could remember.
Yeah.
Or maybe my subconscious did extrapolate this somewhere out of the ether. But I said, let's close our eyes, right? And I want to know what you see, and I'll explain in turn on what I see. And as we're doing this, and we've never done this before, I'm just posing it, and bless my wife's heart, she's willing to go to places with me without even question.
Yeah.
And we do this, and I ask her, I said, so what do you see? No, I think I said, I see like white noise, fuzz, and it has a little bit of color. And I said, what do you see? And she says, yeah, the same thing, like she saw something like this. And then she said she saw something. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I see that too. Now, these aren't illustrations yet, right? It's just the visuals that we're seeing in that moment. And we haven't even done breath work.
Yeah.
We're not even in a meditative state. But because I was trying to get at the love that we have for each other, there's something there that we're not seeing, but could be seen if you just close your eyes and try to shut your mind to it. And we were picking up the exact same images. And these images were that static, like what you would see on a TV, but it had color to it.
Yeah.
And we were actually feeding off each other. What do you suppose that is without even going into the meditative state?
Well, did you ever hear of the CIA experiments in the 1950s and things along those lines where they would do
Astral projecting?
projection and,
Yeah.
and remote
Remote
viewing?
Remote
viewing.
viewing.
They had
Yes.
people like who's since passed, Ingo Swann, I believe is his name, and he was capable of seeing things at a distance and in spaces. In the Noetic Society, they speak about this as well, where psychics are people that are seeing at a rate that would be above chance. So my feeling is that you and she had gone into a resonant state with your minds, and there's been many times, I would say, in the majority of people's lives, where they're singing a song in their head, and then all of a sudden, someone is singing it out loud. My wife and I do that all the time.
We do that all the well. She has Indian songs, right? And and it's her, and she's humming them over the time that we're together, and I pick up on it.
Yeah.
And it's in my mind, and then she'll start singing it, and I'll
Right.
go, okay. So now I know there's this unified field
Yeah.
that we feed off each other. It's not well. Is it tangible? Just because we can't see it, touch it, smell it, taste it, does that make it not tangible?
Well, I mean, what is it gets into what is tangible?
Yeah, define tangible.
Right,
Like define normal.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about something you can pick up and touch, it may not be something within the physical realm, but when you're on the same wavelength with someone, like a belief I have is that we are tapping into realms unseen, and then like the words are coming. Like you'll ask a question, and I'll already have an answer, and it'll already be coming through me, and I'm just like reading off a teleprompter with my mind, or you'll have like a bit of insight or intuition from that space. And you see that like within the globe where you have discoveries that are made simultaneously, across the globe. This is a phenomenon that happens where there's a scientific discovery and they're happening at different points. things like the 100 monkey effect and other jargon like that. But it's palpable in that sense that we're tapped into maybe the mental realm and tapping into.
But okay, so do you think that I find it easier for me to become vulnerable when I don't try? He and I were twins.
Yeah.
We don't try. We could try. It's going to happen naturally. We were just one cell. We split. The wife and I is. Do you think it's the reason being is that you're with someone that you know through and through, and you have this connection, this unseen connection, and so now that you've established this link,
You subconsciously give up your radio frequency.
and now you're able to transmit telepathically.
Yeah, I mean, I would do distance healing. You guys are familiar with distance healing?
No.
Mm-mm.
No. Distance healing is where the person's not present. So I'll tell you a brief story. Okay. I gotten into distance healing like so many things by accident. I was getting into energy work. I had a patient that was kind of like What About Bob, if you remember that movie with, Bill
I'm
Murray.
sailing. I'm sailing.
Yeah, baby steps to the
Baby steps.
Yeah.
We're sailing.
That was
Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
that was him. And he was one of my greatest teachers. And he would come into my office sometimes 5 or 6 times a week. There was one year where he spent this is a lot of money to spend in a chiropractic office. He spent $6,000+ out of pocket because I was not insurance based. He would just come in. If he went over a speed bump, he'd come in. And he began to challenge me from the very get-go. And he would have me do something called the Vulcan mind meld, is what he called it. That was his term. But I would entrain to him, right? I would go into him and he would begin to shake on the table. This is something I never experienced with anyone before. I would think a thought and I would just have these intuitive places within him. And when I would have that, it was like electricity shot through. And after him, I started having to happen with more people. But I would just think in an entangled state with him and he would move. So a few years after that, after working with him, he moved to a different state. He wanted me to continue working with him. And I said, I don't do distance work. And he said, Dr. Ben, you're a healer. You do whatever you need to do. He would just have these moments of great clarity. And then he would kind of walk around like, what about Bob again? But he'd have these moments of great clarity. This is why he was a great teacher. He wasn't consciously sharing these things with me. He was like, it would just unconsciously spill out of him. So I was working out with him at a distance one night. And he could tell when I plugged in because it would be like electricity shooting through him. And he would give me that feedback, right? So now I'm getting feedback. He's in a different state. I'm not in the same room with him. I would think about him and electricity would shoot through and he would kind of like vibrate, right? But then someone else came into my energy field and I started having this thought of this other person I was doing distance work with. And she just came into my mind. And so I thought, well, while she's here, I'll work on her too. So I worked on her. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And I get a message the next morning, right? The message I got was, Dr. Ben, did you work with me? What do you mean? Well, around 11 o'clock at night, I woke up. I felt this great peace move through me. And then I went back to sleep. And things like that would happen with regularity. You know, I messaged my mom the other day, right? I'm technically on vacation, even though to quote the Flight of the Conchords, when you're unemployed, there's no vacation.
Right.
I don't have a job right now.
Right.
Not seeking one either, but I hadn't messaged my mom in like a week and a half or so. But we've always been entangled, always been connected, you know, always thinking in one mind. She's one of the people who taught me how to love unconditionally. Mm-hmm. And I messaged her. I couldn't message her the day before, but I felt the opening intuitively to message her. So I'm going to message her. And what comes in? Can you guess? A message from her at that precise moment.
Right.
Now, it had been a week and a half, right? Where we hadn't been communicating.
Out of all days.
Yeah.
In that moment, and it was right when I was going to hit send that the message came in. So what can I say to that? I can say that one, I believe that consciousness is a non-local experience. Two, I've had an experience with healing. Mm-hmm. And I would even say to people, like, if you love me and you love yourself, then don't worry about me, right? Because every thought you have is a prayer. If you're thinking worries about me, that's what you're transmitting. So if you want to help me and you want to help yourself, then you go into the feeling of a blessing or the feeling of love, right? And transmit that. If you're concerned about me, then see me affluent and happy and with everything I need, and I'll do the same for you.
Right.
But I could see how my thoughts were having an effect at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually getting then the feedback with people that weren't asking. I had one lady where she had a terrible migraine, and she messaged me. I texted her back. She didn't get back to me, but she passed out the minute I started to connect with her at a distance. Her headache went away, and then she messaged me an hour later, and she said, my headache's gone. Now, am I communicating like a superhuman ability with you? No, I'm communicating a gift that we all have that we've forgotten.
Right. And that's what I believe. Like everybody's had that moment where they're thinking about someone,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden they call.
They're having
Right.
conversations in the ethers all the time. My
Right.
wife and I, if we're talking to people in the ethers, which you all three of us have had many conversations over the last few days.
Yes.
Right.
We're talking. And it's so often that she'll have a conversation with someone that she's trying to reconcile something with. And once she's reconciled it within the ethers, the person comes back with a whole different exchange. So we think that we're just having a conversation because we're talking and it's tangible. But what's actually happening etherically too. And I've had that so many times. And again, this is experiential. So if this does not resonate with you, then that's fine.
Right.
But it's something that's happened so many times with me that for me as an empiricist, I feel like it's been proven.
Right.
And this is
Empiricist, what does that mean?
touch, taste, sense, and feel. It's
Okay.
somewhere where you have that tangible experience. I was an agnostic, at least an agnostic in my 20s. And then I started having all these mystical experiences. But I was shut off, and I got a biology degree, and I went to school for chiropractic, which was largely science oriented, even though chiropractors are considered kind of heretical and kind of pseudoscientific. But I went more of a rational, and I shut off to some of these things, and I was in a very shut off state. But to live, I had to open up again, and I had to connect to my faculties. And as abstract as this sounds, the people that were the most skeptical are the ones that would move the most. So if I had somebody I was working with, because they like when you were seeing colors before, it's like you've had these experiences before. But if you haven't had these experiences, when people would come to meditation, they would raise their hand at the end and they'd say, is it normal for me to talk to my deceased grandmother throughout the entirety of the meditation? I'd say, it's whatever your experience is. Or is it normal to see all these colors? Sure. I had one gentleman I worked on in Connecticut. He ran a halotherapy, which is like salt therapy facility. I worked with him. He was just like, matter of fact, he had this East Coast draw. And I did like an hour's worth of energy work with him, and he got up off the table and I said, how was it? He's like, oh yeah, it's real good. It's real good. I really enjoyed it. It's a really good time. What'd you see? Oh, there were these angels in the room and everything like that, and all these colors and everything. And it was, yeah, it was great. It's great. It's a good time. It's a good time. And I was like, so you saw colors? And, yeah, I saw colors and I saw angels and there's all sorts of things. It's a really good thing.
Yeah.
That's all you had to say?
Yeah. But to him,
it sounded like Bill Burr.
but to him,
Yeah.
But to him, it was normal. What does our gurus say to people, shamans, that
bring me fresh flowers first and
they
bring me days.
Yeah. They love ayahuasca. Okay.
What kind of half-rate guru you think I am?
To me,
is this even real leather?
I just give it up to you?
Yeah, I'm just saying. Okay, look.
Is this a motel? What's happening?
Yeah. Do you?
Is this Dateline? What's the...
Just lay your head
It's
right
not
here, sir.
Yeah, just go ahead. You want your feet rubbed?
Yeah, I mean,
We'll go on and lay back and we'll just rub your feet right here and there. But do you try ayahuasca? Are you willing to try ayahuasca?
I will lick a frog right now if you produce it.
Really? You'll lick the sweat off a frog's ass.
I came close to doing ayahuasca. I had a friend who was connected through a lineage, a couple of friends actually. But when I was actually getting close to doing it, I had a friend who was connected to a lineage, and she had a connection to a shaman, and the ayahuasca that he was producing was not causing people to throw up. And I considered it. I've done, for what it's worth, I've done mushrooms probably half a dozen or more times. But I believe that these are teachers, right? Do you ever get into Terrence McKenna?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know.
Both of them.
We spoke about him last night.
Him and his brother.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Because I forget his brother's name, but he's still alive and he's still communicating, and he's like and he vibes with like Rupert Sheldrake and people like that.
Right.
But a couple of things I like from Terrence McKenna. One is the stoned ape theory.
Right.
Which you may have heard of before. Two is a quote that Rupert Sheldrake oftentimes says, and Rupert Sheldrake has his basically his breakdown of scientific dogma, right? Like the Big Bang, right? When he talks about the Big Bang, he says, okay, it's great. We have the Big Bang. We can all agree upon that.
Right.
What happened before that?
Right.
And so Terrence McKenna's line is, science says, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. We have dark matter, dark energy, making up 96 to like 98% of the universe, right? If it's within the equations, what the hell is it? We don't know. I don't know,
Right.
but it fits within the equations.
Right.
You know, gravitational constant is something that isn't constant, but something that we have to calculate and tweak within facilities and things along those lines. These are the words of Rupert Sheldrake. But the stoned ape theory
Mhm.
is a theory that we were foraging, hunting and gathering, and consuming the mushrooms that would grow in cow shit, right?
Mhm.
And we would then go into this etheric state. What happens when you consume the mushroom, though, is you create coherence within the hemispheres of the brain, which is the same thing that happens when you meditate.
Mhm.
So, do I need to go into an ayahuasca state or a mushroom state to go into transcendent states? I don't. You can reach these yogic states through meditation.
Mhm.
What happens with, at least with, I don't know with the functional MRI with ayahuasca, but with at least with mushrooms, it creates coherence within the hemispheres, right? And I believe, this is what I believe, that the brain is actually not where you store information, but it's an antenna, a receiver,
Mhm.
and you're actually receiving information. And when you have coherence, you're not living a split brain or schizophrenic state, a
Mhm.
split mind.
Mhm.
You're creating coherence between the mind,
Mhm.
where the mind is then cohered and unified, left
Mhm.
and right, masculine, feminine, right? And then you're drawing in what you need to because you're tapping into consciousness itself and you're getting a clear signal. And most people have so many signals within their mind, they're not getting a clear signal because they're living this schizophrenic or a schism state. They have all these different personas and all these different masks that they wear. You hear about code switching as an example,
Mhm.
where within one group you talk this way, in another group you talk this way. And imagine splitting yourself that many ways. But when you're your true authentic self and your mind is in a place of coherence, you're activating and connecting within that space. The mushrooms, though, they're a tool to immediately transcend. And this could be, you're talking about a bridge. How do we bridge? What's happening within the world right now is marijuana is now becoming legal within the states. This is a way to alter consciousness.
Mhm.
This is a being that people are connecting with, a state of beingness.
Yeah, this is a catalyst too, as well.
Huge catalyst.
Yeah.
And depending on what you do with it, because it's also a projector.
Mhm.
You take the cannabis,
Mhm.
and whatever you're doing, it's actually maximizing that experience. When I was doing cannabis about like 3 or 4 years ago,
Mhm.
um, I was using it to work on my solar plexus. It was activating my solar plexus. I was moving. A lot of people have paranoia with it.
Mhm.
What I felt energetically was it was actually opening up my solar plexus, and what I had stored in there, what I hadn't faced, was coming to the surface. And then I was having all these projections within my mind, and rather than going into fear,
Mhm.
I was going into a meditative state, and I was using then the cannabis to open up my solar plexus, activate that center, and then bring to the forefront what I had stored within there, and then transmute or move what I'd been storing inside me. And this is the essence behind the good and bad trip too.
Right.
Whatever they're taking in, it becomes a projection of it. And in the case of mushrooms, it's a way to quickly go into a state of pure being and pure consciousness. And if people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, as an example, have not done that before,
Mm-hmm.
but that could be something that really opens your mind.
Right.
Right.
Because if you haven't had that experience.
And why speak ill of something like we said, like you have not done it. So how can you speak about it?
Right. Well, just to play the
gotta do the horns.
Do the horns. Devil's advocate.
the
Here we go.
latter side.
I smell sulfur.
Okay. Who says they didn't? And why do you think they want to tell the public?
Well,
To
then-
not do it.
No. He's saying, what if
no.
Neil deGrasse Tyson
What if
has
they have
done it,
done it?
but he doesn't want to tell the public because
Oh, sure.
he has peers.
And what if they
Yeah.
figured out something that is very alarming and that, yeah, there are entities. I'll do you one better. Ready?
Yeah.
Breaking news. Scientists can prove today that there is life after death. This is on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whatever your flavor is.
Mhm.
It just broke today. What happens?
Well, the same thing. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. So one, I had a patient who came in years ago, and she said that her teacher told her that she couldn't go any further as a soul unless she continued with his teachings and took his additional courses and followed his teachings and followed his path. And she presented that to me as a question. And what I said to her is, you are the limitation point as to whether or not you're expanding or you're taking in more. So if you're entering into a transcendent state, like you did with the near-death experience, or like some people do with mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
is the information blocked or prevented from going in? Right? You have access then to realms unseen. You are tapping into human consciousness, which is a bandwidth, and maybe even transcending that.
So, do you think people abandon their lives right now after hearing this breaking news?
Would they abandon their lives?
Yes.
You have people that would be skeptical. We had things come about aliens the last year and a half. The world has not changed that much from it.
What if they say, okay, on top of his, DMT will let you encounter an alien species? We just figured this out.
Yeah.
You think people will start running to get DMT and wanting to get to that, getting to meet an entity outside their own reality?
Well, if that's the messaging that they're getting that they feel like they're resonating with, then that'll be the experience that they create to open more.
So to his, do you think there would be the suicide rate would jump?
I think that we talked about this at dinner, but I think that you have the you might call it like real death of the physical body,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the many deaths we experience as we're reaching points of expansion. So I think that when you hit a wall within your life, you are given a choice point, and some people choose to end their physical lives. But if they're able to stay with what they're feeling, because every time I want to kill myself, and there's been many times I've wanted to kill myself. My wife and I joke now, like when I was driving through Banff, and I was telling you guys about this, and I was moving an immense amount of energy, and I was having like a dark night of the soul just recently.
Mhm.
I wanted to die. My desire to die was so strong, but my wife and I know, and so she's like, "This is great news," and I'm like, "Yeah, this is great news," because when I'm feeling that death impulse so strongly, it means that a part of me is leaving, a part of me is transmuting, a part of me is shifting. And I'm seeing death because that life, that part of me has no life anymore. When it overtakes me, there's no future for it because it's not meant to continue. It's reached its limit as far as it can go as a consciousness. And then it's transcending. And then what's left is me in a transcendent state without that limitation point. But every time you face that, every time there's a shift in consciousness, like COVID 2020, I mean, I had a lot of people that I had a cancer patient where if he would have listened to what I had to say, he could still be alive now. But it was all falling on deaf ear. I even tried to take on his karma and try to move it through myself, which was a mistake. He didn't want to be here anymore, and I could see that he had actually taken this bus pass to leave,
Right.
and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of people that would exit. Every time you have a shift, there are trees that burn within the forest, and there's a clearing. And then the consciousness shifts, and the people that are meant to be here in the space and time, it's not meant to be dismissive, but that's what propagates.
The scary thing would be that people would abandon ship and not even know why they're abandoning their ship.
Scary from the perspective of putting label and context around, because what you experience with the near-death experience, and Zach Bush talks about this with people he brought back from the dead. You know, he had 5 or so people, and I shared this within a video not that long ago, but he shared that the people he brought back said essentially the same thing. Why did you bring me back? When people experience such a level of pain, it actually transcends pain. You have these endorphins kick in and everything. If you're attacked, there's a certain point where you actually disembody to such an extent where you're not feeling pain anymore. You become etheric. And when you die in that sense, you're, from at least the near-death experiences that you shared and what I've heard, there's no pain and suffering. So it's only the overlay of us saying this is a tragedy, this is sad, this is like the parable of the Chinese farmer, you know, where the Chinese farmer has all these terrible things happen, and you know his response to it all is maybe, it might be. I don't know that for certain. I haven't crossed the veil from their perspective, but I've come to those points inside myself where I didn't want to live, and then I've chosen to face what is before me because I know the score. If you know, and this is not a point of arrogance, I'm still learning and growing immensely, but if you know the game that we're playing in essence, then you can play it.
Yeah.
And it's a game of being present and here with whatever you're facing, loving and being with whatever sensation, the spirituality and everything like that. It's not transcending having emotions and having feelings and sensations. It's being with whatever's here. It's being with perfect being. And if you could do that, then you can face many death cycles. And the people that I would see that would heal, they have more living to do. They have faced something really big to create a space for them to continue living.
You know what I want to, and I don't ever condone drugs, nor would I ever tell anyone to try a drug.
Then why did you give me the frog earlier?
Because you, sir, subjected yourself to
the frog.
Yeah, and
You became the frog.
coming here, you knew what you were getting yourself into.
Have you guys heard me do Kermit the Frog's impression?
No.
Can you do?
I can. You want to hear it?
Shit. So what you?
Why would we not?
Why would
want
we
to hear
not?
it?
Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And what's on the other side?
And it sounds good. You know, most people will say, I could do Kermit the Frog, and it'll sound like shit.
Yeah.
And you'll just be like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But you actually sound like Kermit the Frog.
It's not easy being green.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
It's not easy smoking a green either.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
sometimes.
And it's funny you say that. Like,
Wait, before I lose that thought,
yeah.
I would never condone drugs, nor would I tell people to take it. But now that it's becoming more widely accepted, and there's the stigma around psilocybin is slowly decreasing, especially in places like Oregon where it's legal, and how they've been microdosing and treating people with PTSD,
Yeah.
military, law enforcement, the like, and they're getting great results from this.
Yeah,
right?
like ridiculous.
Like ridiculously, like curing some of their problems as long as they stay with their medicated rate, like their
Microdosing.
Do you believe, because we know, because I've had mushrooms, he's had we've all had mushrooms. Do you believe that if you ingest, so I guess where I'm getting at, and I'm just gonna not beat around the bush, and people that really want to meditate and they really want to self-diagnose and they want to leave the chatter of their mind, we give them a heroic dose of mushrooms. And a heroic dose of mushrooms means to those watching, you will not have control over any goddamn thing, because if you want to go on a trip, it's going to take you there. And it's all about if you're mentally ready to accept the trip, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think the person that's searching really wants to get into the meditative state, really wants to self-reflect and look in the mirror and see his true self? Do we give people like that type of dose?
I don't have an answer for that, because that would be a case-by-case basis, right?
Right.
And Paul Stamets is actually, if you ever listen to him, he's a famed mycologist. He talks about, having done mushrooms many times and doing heroes doses, and even doing like emerita muscaria or something along those lines, which caused him to go into like a cyclical pattern. What excites me about it is that people can leap rapidly in with therapeutic settings.
Right.
It can be
for the person that's struggling, Ben.
Yeah.
The one that says, no matter what you tell me, I cannot get into the meditative state. I've tried over years and years, and the thing that you guys speak of, I cannot achieve.
Right.
Can I get a kickstart? Is there any way to just say, here's a nudge?
I think there's a lot of kickstarts. I think that mushrooms can be one of those kickstarts. But I went with a friend. We did a mushroom session, and at one point, when my wife and I were first getting together, we did it quite a bit with people. Not more than 10 times, but it became like ceremony or something along those lines. We would bring people into, and he had done it like 8 times. But he would do it and then play like video games. And again, this is not to denigrate. This is just what he was doing. When he did that with us, he was sitting between my wife and I, and he just was in this giggly state. And I started laughing, and then he started laughing uncontrollably.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel how it was like, he's like water. I was just like laughing and pushing into him, right? And then he was unfolding into that, and then laughing even harder to the point where he couldn't control himself. And then I was standing on his couch over him and communicating. And then I began to communicate in a very powerful way, where I was like guiding the energy inside of him. And he was having like a shamanistic kind of experience.
Right.
And when he went through that night, and he had cried and he laughed and he went through so much, he said, I've done mushrooms 8 times. I'd never had an experience like this before. Mm-hmm. So who you're with and what you're focused on with it can have an impact.
Big part of it.
It's a
very
let
big
me stress
part of it.
stress that point for the viewers that are watching. If you per se try mushrooms, it is highly imperative. Matter of fact, it is downright important for your first time to do it in the confines of your own home with like-minded people who can help guide you, and preferably with someone who's done it before,
and not a negative Nancy.
And someone,
not someone who's going to take your experience and make it for the worst.
Right, someone you trust and you can be vulnerable with and be yourself. If you're going to do it, that's how I would only recommend you do it.
Yeah, because I've just my own experience. I've had these substances potentiate. So we were in Vermont with friends, and they were moving a lot, and I was having them move it through laughter. And I would start laughing, and they would start like erupting in laughter, and then they would move a lot. But what they were moving, I could feel empathically, and I could feel like the fears and everything coming up, and it echoed. It became bigger and bigger and bigger. So the bad trip that people have is when the thought becomes like the thought form becomes concentrated within them, and they can't shake the thought, and it becomes their reality. And because they're in an altered state, they're having a difficulty grounding or even making sense of what they're experiencing. So, choosing a safe setting, I wouldn't say that there can be a mistake, because whatever we're creating, you know, it's all driving us to self knowledge, self reflection, and self realization. And for me, meditation was a vehicle. I've gone so far with meditation by that point, that mushrooms were kind of like the icing on the
On a
cake.
cake.
But I was already doing a lot of meditation, and there would be some days where I'd meditate for 3 to 5 hours,
Mhm.
and I was building those pathways inside. And so there's so many ways to reach that. But one of the cliches you hear is like, if I can do it, you can do it. I had, just for the sake of a reference point, I had panic attacks and anxiety. I had what could be classified as two nervous breakdowns, even though that's not a medical condition necessarily. I had what could be classified as two nervous breakdowns. And I had something where my mind was racing to such an extent that I just couldn't shut it down. So when I had those breakdowns, my mind would race. I'd lie in bed and it would just go, go, go. I had insomnia and everything as well. And I had just anxiety to the point where I couldn't leave my home.
Mhm.
Like driving in the car as much as we've done and staying all these different places and even going to Europe, that wasn't even a possibility. Like I couldn't go across my yard. I couldn't walk around the block at one point. That's how much fear was inside me and how much anxiety. So it was learning. In my case, I learned transcendental meditation, which I don't really utilize anymore, but that was a vehicle for me. And I learned how to meditate. And in doing so, I learned how to, um, well, the meditation instructor I was listening to years ago said, your mind is like a feral horse, and meditation teaches you how to tame the wild horse and work with it. And eventually you can get on that horse and ride it, and the horse works with you.
Mhm.
So I learned how to work with my mind and not have my mind work against me, and also understand the thoughts I'm having are aspects I carry inside. And if I'm stuck within a thought, like for instance, there's no job right now that I'm doing, my wife and I have been spending money and everything else along those lines. So you have the thought of, what if I run out of money, right? But I know where that thought's coming from, where that fear comes from.
Mhm.
So I sit with that. And then I go into a space where I can actually see how everything I need is actually here, and I begin to see possibility. When we get stuck in these blocked thoughts, I used to equate it to like being in a room where you can only see the corner of the room. And when you expand your horizons, you begin to see, wait a second, there's a window and a door right there. But you have to slow down to get there, to be able to see that there's always a doorway and there's always a pathway for you. But for me, and for anyone listening, if you're having an issue with meditation, sometimes being with people that are in their being, sometimes meditating with people that are already vibrating high, sometimes meditating within a group. There were many people that meditated within a group where we were leading, and within a very short period of time, we'll be creating a channel. That's one of the goals we have, is to create a channel, put out meditations, do live stream meditations and things like that, and bring people into some form of entrainment or some sort of connection. But it's easier to do within a group. It's like the Christian saying, when two or more gather in my name. When you meditate with people, that can actually enhance the experience as well. And if you're with somebody who is deeply present or deeply connected, they can activate that within you. But that's a long way to go to say there's many pathways to get there. And if I can go from having panic attacks and anxiety to a point of feeling like a stillness inside myself 99% of the time,
Mhm.
then the pathway is there for everyone.
Right.
Let me ask you a couple of closing questions.
I'm going to be here all night.
And I want to be here all night. But when we start to close out, we have questions we normally ask. If anyone's watching and they want to throw in a question, you can. But go with me, okay?
Mhm.
You meet a jinn. There's no way to avoid this jinn.
Does a gin have a tonic?
May or may not.
Okay.
Yes, I love a good gin tonic. Just
I mean, some gins. Never mind. Damn it, Ben! You take me off these.
So like a genie, like a
Okay.
gin.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you meet a jinn. There's
Okay.
no way to avoid this jinn.
Okay.
He is definitely going to grant you 3 wishes.
Yeah.
You're going to have to utilize these 3 wishes. Okay.
Okay.
There's no escaping this. And just go with me. Just play with me. What do you wish for?
I mean, I could quote MF Doom. First wish is to ask for more wishes. I
Okay, wait,
feel-
hold on here. Now I forgot about that MF Doom. Can you wish for more wishes? I didn't know that was on the table, Ben.
according to Aladdin, you can't. That was one of the provisions. Within,
okay.
So we'll say that you can't.
Okay, Jesus.
There's a line. It's an old Persian curse, and the Persian curse is, "May you get everything in life that you want." So what you're asking depends upon one's level of consciousness and understanding.
Okay,
Oh,
we're not-
yeah,
don't
well,
don't
I
go
mean,
into that right
no,
now.
that is definitely
Okay, but I want to know what his 3 wishes are. Save me this and just give me 3 of your fucking wishes. What are they? Go now.
Well, if I was based on my human state right now, I would ask for all the resources that I need to create what it is I wish to create within the world. That would be one wish.
Mhm.
2 would be probably something akin to world peace, or living in a world of interconnection. I don't know what the third one would be. So I did something years ago called Kriya Shakti, and Kriya Shakti was run through pranic healing, a technique. It opened my mind to manifestation. Right? It's a very worthwhile technique. If anyone's listening, it helped me.
Mhm.
It helped me. And you would write in these journals, and you write as though it was actually happening in real time.
Mhm.
So you would say, "I'm so grateful that I've manifested millions and millions of dollars to
Right.
create what it is I want to create
I try to get into that. Yeah.
Mhm.
as within X period of time." So we'll say within the next 2 days
Right.
or
right.
sooner,
Right.
right? And you go into the feeling of it. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
Whatever the word is for you, I'm so joyful.
Yeah. I have it.
I
Yeah.
have it, right? What you're doing is you're going into the frequency then. That's what I didn't realize. You're going into the frequency of one that already has it. It's not about what you thought you wrote down. It's
Mhm.
about going into the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Because the abundant state is
Mhm.
a state you're occupying that you feel.
Mhm.
It's a state you're occupying that you are creating as a consciousness.
Right. You're already saying to yourself, you don't have it because you're saying you want it.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And by you saying you want it means you don't have it. So put yourself in the state of, I already have it. This is what it's like to have it. This is what I'm doing with it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Abraham Hicks was another good source for that. I'm not sure if you know who she is.
One of the greatest founding fathers,
Yeah.
407 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. I know who
Yes.
Abraham Hicks
Well,
is.
I know you do. And I also know your sarcastic humor is
Yeah.
very dry, like the Sahara
Why do you
Desert.
think I'm drinking so much
Yeah,
water?
yeah. My good sir, you are parched.
So-
I'm desiccated.
So
Yes.
let me tell you what my wishes would be.
That's why you asked me.
No,
You just wanted to get to what?
but it reminded me of it reminded me of my wishes that I had, and now you just completely
before you
changed
start
my
shores,
mind.
before you start shores, one of the commenters, in a few words, Ben, who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah, in a few words, who are you?
I am you in another form. I am you that you're listening to hear the words that you're hearing, so that you can have the experience you're having. You've created me. I don't exist outside of you.
You stole that from me.
But I'm also a ginger who likes walks on the beach.
He's a yeah,
He stole that from me.
he's a ginger heathen.
Okay, so my wishes. Now I don't want them anymore after listening to you because
Good, I'll take the money.
because they I think a gin would be crafty. I think a gin would give you what you want, and without context behind it. With a gin, there could never be enough context. And although you wish for these one things, I still don't think it would be the thing you truly wanted now.
Because you're asking from a place that doesn't have. So you're sending out a broadcast signal all the time, right? Which we don't know that we're doing, but we are.
Mhm.
So if I say I want to be wealthy, what am I really saying? I'm really saying I don't have any money.
Yeah.
Or if I say I want to have more friends, I'm saying I don't have any friends. So whatever you're asking for, it also presupposes a negation.
But Ben, I could wish for peace upon the world. But what does that look like when there's peace upon, like, what did the gin really give me? Peace upon the world. Okay, there's peace, but
and
What
maybe the world's at war and
what
you're at peace.
follows? What follows after? Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so now, if I'm presented with three wishes, I don't want him. I don't want any of this because now I just might alter things that I don't know what I'm fucking with right now. You see what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah,
Like,
you're tinkering, and so my wife and I talk about this place inside. It's the not enough place, and any point where you doubt yourself, or any point where you feel like if I just had this car, or if I just had more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get it, and you find, and this is like a line from Jim Carrey. Like he said, I'm six-time Golden Globe Award winner Jim Carrey. I'll only be complete when I'm seven-time Golden Globe Award winner Jim Carrey.
Right.
But he realized, and you see this with like celebrities where they reach a certain point and they're in Betty Ford Clinic or wherever trying to overcome an addiction because the peak of the mountain wasn't even the peak, wasn't even a summit. Like it just led to another mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we're living from the not enough place, we're always looking for something to fulfill us. This is
Mhm.
like the lie of materialism. You can have anything material, and according to the Buddha, if you're attached to it, it creates suffering. But I can pick up this water. One of my teachers would say, I could pick up this water and I could drink the water, right? And I can put it down. I'm done. And that's what I'm doing in the world is I'm picking up and I'm attaching and I'm letting go. If
Mhm.
I can't let go, it creates suffering.
Mhm.
But if I'm holding on to it, it creates, it creates suffering if I hold on to it. If I let go, right? And that's all we're doing. We're picking up material like our physical bodies and we're letting go over and over and over again. So what to get to the point of the Kriya Shakti, what they were saying is at a certain point, this is one of my teachers was saying, at a certain point, you're not going to ask for a car. At a certain point, you're not going to ask for more money. At a certain point, you're going to ask for world peace, right? And then when you reach a certain level of understanding, you realize the world is you and you're just walking in peace. And it's your perceptive field that actually sees it as peace, that has actually created world peace because you see it globally. And so you are then the perspective of peace. And wherever we're going is in that space anyways. So if I gave you all the money in the world and everything else, you could have some fun for a while, but that would just become your norm, right? But if you eschew materialism altogether, which is what the Buddha tried to do as well, he tried to take asceticism. It created pain and suffering. So he chose a middle path. He chose something that was harmonic, where he could pick up something, he could have his water, he could move within space, but he wasn't attached to it. He allowed himself to be. And he lived in harmony in the Eightfold Path. He lived in harmony in all these other stations of his life, from relationships to food to vocation to everything else. So it is a double-edged sword. It's like the story of the monkey paw.
Mhm.
Monkey paw has like three wishes as well, or something along those lines, and it creates a curse because what the person thinks that they want, and that's the joke of the universe. When we talked about this earlier, we're always getting what you need. So we're getting what we need in every moment. If you can accept what is here and now, right now, and you can meet this moment, then you can create the life you want to create because you can actually be here and be present and face whatever you have to face, and then be a conscious creator and become consciously creative with creative source, whatever you call that.
right.
And then you're actually creating as source, with source, walking as source. But you have then given yourself through surrender free will. You've let go of free will because now you're connected to divine will, you're connected to universal will, or the will of the creator. And you're creating your whole universe based upon that.
That reminds me of when I'm over at my music console and I'm messing with synthesis.
Yeah.
My I once questioned my mentor and I said, because he messes with modulation a lot. Okay. He has an awesome modulator. And I hear all the awesome sounds he can pull off from this. And then I hear all the awesome sounds I can create.
Hmm.
And then in my mind, I go, I got to loop this. I have to save it. And then I'm asking my mentor, I'm like, I think I'm going to run out of space. Or how do you save it all? Or I just created this sound and it's so, and he goes, so there's your problem right there is you have to learn to be in that moment of that. You created that. It's beautiful. But you also have to let it go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can't save everything.
Yeah.
You can't take everything with you.
It's like the mandala.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that is that one, it taught me, I don't know how, I don't even think he knows how much that really taught me about my life. You know, it didn't stop there.
Mhm.
It was like, well, shit, I was hanging on to this, or I hung on to that from the past. And why haven't I let that go? And why is it so hard to let this beautiful sound go? My brother hasn't even heard this yet.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, maybe some things aren't for everybody. Maybe some things are for you for that moment to let you know, hey, you are a creator, you are a God here, and you are from God. And it's what God is doing now. It's sending out one of his tentacles
Mhm.
only to admire itself
Yeah.
and put itself out there and go, oh, look at this.
Yeah.
I can experience this on any plane, and that just reminded me, if you create something or you make something and it was great in that moment, it's okay to let it go. It's okay to go, I'll never have that
Mhm.
again. I'll never feel that again. I'll never be able to listen to how gorgeous that was again. But then
Yeah.
guess what? I could create something else to take its place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then I'm back in the same boat.
Yeah, you're back.
Right.
You're back creating and letting things
And
go.
letting things go.
I think the human condition just has a hard time, period, with that control and just letting go of control. The more you let go of control, the more you're just going to naturally be.
Yeah.
The moment you have the realization, I can't control shit. The only thing I can control is when I'm walking and this next foot hits the ground. I can control the next thought that comes out of my head because I'm thinking about this. You only have the moment, right? Anything else is just a game of it's a possibility. the,
Yeah.
the past, you look at it and it should have been a learning point at some point when you think about the past. There should not be any regrets and go, I wish I could have did this different. It always should be, oh, I'm reflecting and I remember what that did to me and now I know now,
Yeah.
and now I can say I'm letting that go. Or you'll project in the future and go, I know what, my marriage is going to look like. I know what this car and how I'm going to get there. It's you're projecting that, you're kind of living that out, but it's not here.
Mhm.
The only way to get to any place in the perceived future is your actions that you do now.
Yeah.
The things that you do when you're in the moment is how you get there.
Yeah.
I am notorious for falling victim to the past and the future.
Yeah.
I am notoriously victimized by myself because my imagination is 10 times worse than reality.
Yeah. We always fret about the worst case scenario.
I
Yes.
can paint a
Yeah.
horrible picture.
Hmm.
I could tell you I'm going to drink this bottle of water, choke to death in the agonizing pain, and just die of that. It's going to be agonizing. Versus I'll just open the water up and just have a sip of water and it goes down just fine.
And it
Yeah.
and just saying that, I always know I'm on the right track because there's days like this.
Hmm.
Had I made any other decision, this isn't here.
Yeah.
If I go against any part of the grain, this isn't here. And the proof is we're sitting here right now and we're having this conversation. So all the things I did from the past led up to this moment
Right.
right now.
The summation of everything.
And the one big thing that I recently learned, and I shared that with you today while we were eating, was this. And I just caught myself just recently and told myself this. If I'm in the room and no one's in there, wait for it to fill up.
Hmm.
And that's it. Whatever that means to anyone right now, really think hard about what I just said, because I don't want to dictate what that means to you, but I know what it means to me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm having my own overlay of meaning with that. Um, without colorizing that though, because it's important that whoever's listening has their own version of what it is you said. I would like to touch upon the past and the future briefly. And there was an understanding from, I forget the gentleman's name right now, but he was talking about the ancient Hebrew understanding of time. And he equated it to the caravan of time, is what he called it, the caravan of time. And he said, instead of looking at the past as behind us, look at the past as ahead of us. because that's what's pulsating out from this moment is the past, right? Whatever you're holding on to is pulsating out. Think of the future is actually behind you, a caravan of time. The future is the next generation that's coming up behind you. So you're actually not facing the future the way we think about it. We're actually facing the past all the time, and it's overlaying upon what we call the future. But as we face the present moment, we create a different future. We also create a different past. So if I live this moment well, this is what I would say. If I live this moment well, I'm actually rewriting my past. I'm actually affecting my future, since my future is predicated on the pulsation of my past.
So
which
profound.
which still comes from the concept that you've learned from your past. Because if we created this ripple behind us,
Yeah.
and the past is now pushing forward, right?
Yeah.
Because the past, what we've done, it's already out there. It's in the future,
Yeah.
right? That means we've learned from it, so we're able to rewrite everything at this point. In essence,
and that means that the generations that come up. So you think about generations. Generations is generational, and so you can ask yourself the question: what am I generating? Because you're a generator. You're a generator. You're a manifestor. You're a generator, and the children are the generations from the generator. So if I'm generating within this moment positivity or connection, and it's a referendum upon what I've been living, and I'm creating connection, that means that my son and my children don't have to live through generational pain and trauma and emotion, because I have dealt with, for lack of a better word, I dealt with my shit.
Yeah.
I faced myself.
Yeah.
And so what is coming within my wake, then you think about wake as far as a funeral sense, but also the wake of a boat. What's coming in my wake are the generations that are following me. And the best thing I could do is pass a torch to my son, one where he's not walking within the dark or trying to navigate his way. Now he's going to have his own stuff. We're
Right.
human.
Right.
He'll have things that he faces. We always joke that he's going to be like Alex P. Keaton. He had
Right.
two parents that were like out there and doing energy stuff and everything. He's going to work in the financial world. You
Right.
know,
But at least he'll have the proper fucking tools to do it.
well, you would. My wife would say cancel clear in this moment, but with that, he can be whoever he's meant to be, and he'll have the tools and faculties to do so. But I think that's the stewardship that we offer the world, is just by facing whatever it is we're facing, then anyone we engage with, we can each one teach one. And it's a fractal universe anyway. So I met a friend who was an alcoholic for a period of time. And he was getting his stuff together, and he got into NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. That's what he got into. It's like a form of therapy in a sense. And he started working with people. And the people he was working with, as you can well imagine, were himself. We're always working with ourselves. So as we're healing, our children carry whatever it is we're healing, and we're actually healing through our children. Our children are an extension. Whatever I haven't faced in my childhood, I'm giving to my children now. And whoever's in front of me is an extension of me. So he was actually working with people that had alcohol issues and were adopted, because he was adopted, and had a lot of self-worth issues. As he was dealing with that, he was having people come up behind him in his wake. And those are the people that he was treating within his neuro-linguistic programming. That's the way of it. When I was getting better, I was working with people with chronic fatigue, because I had overcome chronic fatigue. Now I could go back in time, and what was seeking me were those parts of myself. And I could say to that part of myself, this is how you heal from this condition. I could give myself in another person's form whatever it is I didn't have at the time, and I could give them all the tools. And this is essentially why I want to do what I'm doing right now. I want to go back in time to the part of myself that didn't know how to meditate, the part of myself that didn't know how to heal, the part of myself that did not know how to connect with energy, the part of myself that did not know how to be. And I want to share everything openly and freely. I want to share everything.
But you can't do that. What does that feel like? That
Oh,
you
he's
can't
doing it.
fucking do that.
He's doing it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Look
Well,
here. Look.
Yeah, I know, but
It's getting late on our end.
Yeah.
I could sit here and listen to Ben all day, listen to myself and my brother. I don't know when we'll have a chance to do this again here. And I dare not try to contemplate on a date, because the magic happens just how it did today. Today is the first day we met Ben and his lovely wife and his son. And there's no way you could plan that.
No.
So if you want to stay in touch with what we're doing, obviously keep watching the podcast. But I really encourage you to go to Ben's channel if you want to give that information again.
Yeah, our website is thisiswhyouareyou.com. So it's letter Y, U, R, U. And if you look up Euro on YouTube, you're probably going to find some Japanese anime channels. But we're in there, I assure you. And we have a channel on YouTube that is burgeoning, and we're putting out new pieces. We have new pieces coming out in about a week or so. We're going to start a podcast soon. We're going to start meditations online, and we have books coming and everything like that. But it's, you know, you're going to find what you need to find within the world. If this has resonated with you, then, you know, more is coming.
Yeah.
In many different forms.
Ben is modest, but he also is looking but not looking for employment. So this is the way that we are employing making ourselves self-employed. So please help the channel out. Go to our Patreon and do what you can do. We're on Instagram. We are on, what else are we on, Bub?
We're on everything that we should be.
Yeah, we're on everything that we should be.
It's all down in the bottom.
Goddamn, like the channel, like you. Yeah, like the Guru channel.
It's all down in the bottom.
And then have at it. I hope you all got something from this. Go to fucking bed. Well, I don't know. That's what I'm gonna do. So with that said, we're out of here. So for me, peace.
Yeah. Peace.